the cooling tower to be at an elevation almost level to the first floor of the building. And I apologize for not seeing his submission sooner, but once we did, we asked him to correct it, of which he did, and he showed it at the correct elevation, which is at approximately 2 feet higher than the basement elevation.
Got it.
And that's what was submitted previously to you. So the responses that we got back from our last submission, I'm a little confused with that there was concern that it blocked the view of the windows. And
that was the issue. I think ARC had seen this one with a blocking of the first floor. Then, quite honestly, the second concern they have is, although the Board of Ed does not anticipate ever reusing, ever repurposing that basement level, it did seem that it blocked the kick by, so to speak, by having that there. And that was the second area of concern. Nick, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
I think what it is that the ARC was looking at, I guess, one of the plans that the architectural firm had provided, and it seemed that it was almost up against the building, or, you know, way too close to their liking. I'm not too sure exactly what they actually saw, but their recommendation was to actually move it away from the building and lower it into the grade, so it wouldn't obstruct windows and be, you know, farther away from the building itself and the windows of the building. We have a plan. This was from December 5th of 22, showing just rectangular outlines of the machine, its pad, a fence, that kind of thing. Doesn't indicate gate location or anything like that, and approximate distances away from the building. And then a section of the same kind of thing, basically showing distance from the existing wall that's out there, and heights of the fence, that kind of thing. I think what ARC was looking for was some landscaping around the screening fence, slats in the screening fence, trying to recess the whole installation deeper into the grade, and get it farther away from the building.
So if you don't mind me commenting on that. So currently there is a low wall, and you can see it in the picture, in the diagram that's above. It's currently in front of you. The property just past, or to the bottom of the page, past where we're showing the pad, like I said, drops off. There's a significant amount of ledge in that area. We looked at that area, and it would cause us some unbudgeted issues with having to dig it into the hill, putting in a pad, putting in a retaining wall. It would mean a different, it would mean longer piping for the unit to get into the building, which was unaccounted for, and which may impact the size of the equipment that's already been pre-purchased in order to meet our schedule. There is some, it's not shown very well, and I apologize, but the intent was that screen will definitely have slats in it. And we do understand that the ARC is looking at some kind of plantings around it, and we're open to that. I don't have an issue with that.
I'm gonna be very, very frank here. The between the lines reaction of the ARC was that your architect was not actually physically familiar with the site. That gave them a concern. Hold on just a sec. And whether that was accurate or not, never mind. The big reason that was a concern was that, as far as we know, for the future plans of Julian Curtis, it is not going to be demolished. It's going to be kept as a school, and we're going to try to update it. That's what we understand is the plan for the time being. And so what ARC was focused on was something that worked well with your site, so that the school would preserve as many options as possible. At the same time, we know you have really significant budget constraints. You're looking at a lot of capital improvements that are necessary to your buildings, and nobody wants to have you incur spending that isn't necessary. So we wanted to work with you, and this is what we were saying yesterday. We want to work with you for something that is a consensus solution that optimizes those objectives. How do we make sure you have the most flexibility for the future of your building? How do we make sure that we're not forcing you to spend money you don't need to spend? And how do we make sure that whatever you do is sensitive to the actual topography of the site, which is, if you've mentioned, has that drop off. And it's also a nice building that eventually will look nicer, we hope. So those are our things. So don't worry about, if ARC was right or wrong. That's where we want to move forward. So if you've got the slats, if you've got the landscaping, we understand that burying the tower further is a cost for you that you don't want to incur, correct?
That's correct.
Nick, you spent a lot of time on this. Any further on that?
I would say that, Mr. Watson, you're going to excavate for the foundations of the pad, the fence, that kind of thing. That's kind of a given. I would suggest that actually when you excavate for the pad and the foundations, that as you're going down, instead of actually using the high point of your existing grade, dig down to a low point, and that's your top of slab elevation. So rather than, as suggested by ARC, going down 4 feet, you're going down, maybe it's 2 feet, something that wouldn't require a retaining wall. Understanding, yes, you have ledge there, but it's my understanding you're gonna dig for a foundation to support the machine on top. So set that elevation of that slab as far down as you possibly can before you get encumbered by ledge and encumbered by having to build any kind of a retaining wall. I think one of the things that actually stood out in my mind most on this is that the working end of these machines are the fans on top. So standing in the second floor classrooms or the first floor classrooms, I'm looking out the window, it's right into the top of this thing. And the humming fans and all of that kind of stuff really is going to be a nuisance to, I think, a conducive working environment inside the classroom. So getting it down low as possible and far away from the building as possible is the best bet.
Make sense?
Agreed.
Mr. Watson, can you live with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because what we're doing is trying to find a compromise, but it
Yep.
just, the reason we're, besides the fact that Nick has an architectural degree, one of the reasons we're asking him so much on this is he's on the Julian Curtis Building Committee. So
Yes.
anything that's future plans for Julian Curtis, we want him to be very cognizant of, because he's the one who's going to have to be telling the rest of the building committee what we did and why, what you did and what we did. So if that works, we can make a motion for you. So essentially we're upholding ARC, but changing it on the digging down on the depth, because apparently it wasn't well shown on the plan what the height was of the tower. Correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
if I can put it in layman's terms, Mr. McRae, we want to put the pad for the equipment as low as possible. My only concern is, and I'm not trying to dissuade you in any way, is we also have a sloped elevation to one side of it that I would not want water running down onto the slab. So we would still be, maybe 6 inches above the grade on one side.
No, we know you have a slope there. This is,
well, it slopes in 2 directions is what I'm trying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Mr. McRae is well familiar with the property.
Right. I think it's understanding that, Mr. Watson, is that you're out there going to be excavating for this machine. I would, tend to go on the low side as far down as you can get to be feasible. I mean, it's great. If you go down to 2 feet and hit ledge, bing, you're done. You pin right to the ledge and you're saving money on concrete for the foundation. So
Understood.
I would recommend, actually, Mr. LaRoe, this is a discussion item?
Yes,
that we're
but we
talking about?
should, yeah, but let's make it a resolution. We can still resolve based on the discussion, and that way Patrick can send out a letter. That staff can send out a letter that Mr. Watson can put into his files, that what we've asked for and what he's doing, so that anytime there's a question in the future, how we always try to make sure we're prepared for those future questions.
Mhm.
You know, you can pull it out, Mr. Watson, and say, no, this is what P and Z said. They supported ARC, but they made some changes so that it worked for us.
If the question, Mr. McRae, is should you be making a motion, you can absolutely be voting on this and
Yeah.
final, with,
Yeah.
with whatever conditions
That
you want.
was my long-winded answer to, that was yes. Because, so, based on that, does anybody from the public wish to comment on the Julian Curtis School? Because I'm not seeing anything from the commission right now. No. Okay, does anybody from the commission want to add anything? No. Okay. So with that, Mr. McRae, could we have a motion that,
Okay, bear with me just to make sure we got all the
yeah,
bits and
just
pieces
wing
here.
it and we'll all help you out.
Okay, this is 180 East Elm, Julian Curtis School, PLPZ 2022-557. Proposed ground-mounted cooling tower with screen fence at Julian Curtis School. Okay, motion to approve, noting the following. The applicant has agreed to slats per ARC recommendation and surrounding landscape per ARC recommendation. The excavation for the footings, et cetera, should be kept as low as possible into the grade of the building, of the site, to get it down and away from the building and away from the second floor of the windows. Plans should be updated to reflect this information and presented to ARC as they requested an electronic return. Plan should be reflect distances, heights, show gates of the enclosure, and a landscape plan to show location, species, and type of landscape around the chain link fence. And anything else we should we add to that?
You got the slats, you got the fact that they'll go as far as they can on how far down they'll go.
Mhm.
Did you mention the distance from the building?
Yeah, it's going to be as far away as possible.
Right,
Uh,
without putting them at the risk of the slope, having
Right.
just to do any kind of wall for the slope.
Right. So right now, Mr. Watson, if I understand, we've got 2'6" from the existing brick low retaining wall out there. If that could be actually opened up to say 3 feet or better, that'd be wonderful.
Very good.
Okay, do I have a second for that? Dead silence.
Second.
You can, okay, Mr. Levy, thank you for rescuing us. Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Watson, I don't know what that means if nobody wants to second the motion for you. Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Yes, aye.
Okie dokie. Mr. McRae,
Aye.
Mr. Lowe,
Aye.
and Mr. Levy. Uh-oh.
Aye.
Aye, good. Phew. Thought we were going to lose you. And Albin is also aye. And with that, the motion passes 5-0. The only thing I wanted to add to that, and we probably should have put it into the motion, is if you have any doubts, just go back to Patrick and address them with him. So that if anything comes up, and we are cognizant of your budget constraints, but at the same time, we really think it's important that you keep the building as flexible and viable, right? Yeah, and you can't disagree
Understood.
with us. I'm sure you feel the same way, right?
Absolutely.
These are your buildings. They're your babies, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Watson.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so for our next application, I'll get Mr. Watson gone if you want. Our next application is the Walgreens store number 6757. This is to relocate a trash enclosure at 1333 East Putnam Avenue in the LB zone. The issue with this enclosure was lack of consistency with the approved site plan. The applicant is now coming in to propose a location for the enclosure, and the applicant is where?
Kyle Freehart, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad he was here. All right. All right, Mr. Freehart, hello.
Hey, how's it going? Good morning,
Where
Madam.
are you? You're high up.
Where am I? I'm
Yeah,
over
you're,
here.
no, you're high up in a building.
Oh, in the building, yes. I'm in my office right now. I figured instead of being in my apartment as I was last time, it might be a better way to convey our hopes and dreams here. So
Way to
I think,
okay.
yeah, so we submitted a new document through Marissa, and I really appreciate that based on Mr. McCry's requests to add an additional information pertaining to the limits of the width. I don't know if you're able to present that exhibit. That'd be great. Thank you so much, Marisa. Yep. So in here, we included the requested location, both face fronting and rotated at the original plans, and then identified the parking spaces that would be lost based off of the Greenwich UDO indicating the amount of width for 90-degree parking stalls, and then provided the 4 options for your committee to choose.
Okay. And Mr. Lowe, you had some, can you take down the share for a second? We've got some photographs that are in the public record now, right, Mr. LaRoe? That Mr. Lowe had taken earlier today that you wanted to comment on before we go further? So Mr. Lowe was out at the site today, Mr. Freehart, and he took some photographs, put them in the public record so we can share them with you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, there's been a fair amount of discussion about the placement and the purpose of the existing compactors or dumpsters back there. They're both, I learned from personnel at, not from Walgreens, but at the gym. So treat this anecdotally. That these are dedicated to Walgreens, that they are connected in the rear of each bin by this metal chute where deposits are made directly from the store. They're attached. And if you go to the next photo, can we?
Yeah, just give me a sec. Oh,
She's working on it.
There you go. There's the existing condition, and in a rough measurement of the width of that, meaning the spread on the front side that is on the far left there with the white label on it, is roughly 75 inches, and the depth, the face of that bin as we're looking at it, is also about 75 inches. Oddly enough, the space between the edge of the building and that window is also about 75 inches. It could go there where right now there's some metal box that's there, but it could go where that metal box is. It would not be out alongside the building, but would actually be positioned in the rear, which is, I believe, where we came out yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Yes.
And so it would not, there was some discussion in a previous meeting about the potential for this to obstruct the window. By my rough calculations, that wouldn't be the case.
Am I allowed to comment on that?
Yes, of course. That's why we were showing you the pictures, because
Oh, perfect.
we wanted
Okay.
to show you we were interested in doing this right.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. So the original violation was based off of a screening issue. So the dumpster itself may be 75 by 75 and fit perfectly there. But in order to encapsulate it in the facade element that is requested by the violation, we would exhibit beyond that. That's the challenge of what the requirement is. So I believe then the question is, what does that need to be? And I don't know, is that an ARC decision or is that a P&Z decision? I guess that's kind of a part of the question as well, to address the original violation. So just kind of fighting for inches here, I think, but that's the original reason behind the location and the distances of it. And then in addition, when you do any foundations, we need to be offset from the building some distance as well, to ensure that we're not imparting any additional loads into the foundations of that existing structure. So if we can get it to fit in there, then whatever this council wants to do, we'll abide to. But that is part of the discussion here that's being had.
Okay, any comments from anybody?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Lowe. I got to find something in my in the information that I'm provided. So go ahead.
Nick, in the original plan from way back whenever it was, I believe you indicated that the position I was just describing was the part of the original approval or the plan. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
final site
Okay.
plan 2279 was that's where it was supposed to go, in the corner.
Okay. And was there some plan, any kind of vegetation that was any screening that was proposed?
Not specifically around the dumpster location, but adjacent to that on the street facing facade of the building itself. And it seems actually the applicant has actually provided a reinstatement of that landscape plan as part of this application.
Yeah, but the bottom line, and I'll stop talking, is that the positioning it back to where it had originally been proposed or planned or approved is preferable and possible, and it will satisfy whatever the violation was originally.
It would seem, yes, that would, if it goes back to where it was in the original, it could satisfy the screening and tend to the violation.
I'm done.
So
Okay,
no enclosures required for it now, I presume then? That assumes that as long as we put the dumpster, relocate it to that location, that's the 75 inches that Peter had mentioned, that would be the location that the desired is. So I guess it's option 1, I think. Is that what the preference is, or is it option 3? So we have an understanding.
As from your exhibits, it seems that it's option 3,
Okay,
where the truck collecting it would be actually coming in off the post road to the front facing the street, facing US 1.
got
That's
it.
where the gates would be.
Perfect. Sounds
Okay.
good.
And I think with the enclosure, you've got 2 sides, the third side being possibly the building itself.
Yeah.
And you're holding up a concrete block. I see what you're trying to do here. I would think actually if you do 3 sides, 1 side be the building, you probably wouldn't have to worry about compromising the foundation of the existing building. It looks like you're actually just a kind of a very deep grade beam rather than an honest cut footing with a foundation with a footing.
If we were to use the existing footing or the foundation, we'd have to do an existing structural analysis to run a gate arm off of that. In addition, the depth is 9'4" internal to that structure to fit a 4-yard element, plus the 10 inches. So you've got 10 foot into that section. We're okay to provide, if we're expecting to provide something different than the masonry, again, I'm all for whatever solution will get us resolved for sure. So if that's the desired option, and then there's no concerns about the width to which it would impact the 3 spaces adjacent to it, then we're fine to proceed with that.
No, I think actually those 3 spaces that are being impacted, actually, I think your slide, your detail number 2, actually even detail number 1, actually, it was kind of misleading to us, it seems. We were unaware that there were 2 dumpsters way in the back there. So those parking spaces that are shown on your drawings actually are compromised already.
Mhm.
The original site plan didn't envision or have dumpsters located in that location.
Yeah, and I don't think it also captured the original site plan had gym below the building as well. So another caveat there, but
Are we good with the location and 2 sides being some a form of a masonry and the third side being building?
I think what we agreed is the less visible it is from the post road, the better we are.
Mhm. Okay,
That's
and then
what
the
we were
landscape
talking
plan
about
actually,
yesterday.
yeah, the landscape plan actually extends the landscape down a little bit farther along the that first parking space. I guess it's an ADA parking space. Is that correct, Mr. Fier?
Yeah, it's supposed to be an ADA parking space. We measured it in the field and it currently does not meet that code in terms of cross slope. So
Okay.
we can bring that to compliance.
Okay,
One question on that, on the ADA space. Was that an official town ADA space?
you mean to DPW standards, to the ADA's national standards, right?
Yeah, it'd be building code standards, but yeah.
Building, yeah, building code and, yeah,
Well, I just.
I got it eventually.
Anecdotally, again, I got commentary about an ADA space down there that was created but did not have the official Town of Greenwich sticker that's the official authorization. This is going back some time when it was first put in there. So I'm just curious whether that.
Has been resolved.
Yeah.
So who
Mr.
does
Prior,
that?
you know?
Who gets that?
The property owner is gonna have to properly sign. If it is the space for code purposes, it would have to be marked and signed appropriately. So I'm hearing Mr. Friard saying that they can do that.
Yep. That
Okay,
is
so
it.
okay, that was the original location. There were two spaces there, one that was accessible. And this is going back to the original site plan day,
Yep.
2279.
Yep.
So there were two spaces, one accessible and it looks like a standard space. So again, that would be appropriate signage and pavement markings.
Okay. All righty. Anything else in the commission? No. Does anybody from the public wish to comment about this application for Walgreens at 1333 East Putnam Avenue for the trash enclosure? Please raise your virtual hand if you're on the phone, or please raise your virtual hand on your phone. That's *9. No comments. Okay. So does anybody object to closing this application at this time? Seeing no objection, this application is hereby closed. Mr. McRae, we would happily entertain a motion.
Okay, give me a second here. Three sides, case facing street. Okay. This is 133 East Putnam Avenue, final site plan, PLPZ 2022-534. Applicant seeking to construct a compliant rubbish area enclosure to address a zoning violation. The property located at 133 East Putnam Avenue in the LB and Post Road Impact Overlay Zones. Whereas the property owner received a notice of violation dated 6/21/19. The notice indicated that the rubbish area enclosures do not have the required screening or fencing per section 6/192 of the BZR. The commission notes that the property was granted a final site plan on 6/21/02 under final site plan 2279. The commission finds that there's 157 parking spaces that exist on the site, of which 6 are ADA compliant. Sewer Division issued comments dated 1/31/23, requesting applicants submitting an acknowledgement letter. Engineering applicants submitted a drainage exemption dated 11/4/22. And the ARC issued comments dated 9/7/22, indicating issues to be addressed and request the applicant return to meeting for further review. Therefore, motion to approve the site plan, noting the following. At no time shall parking be reduced unless to 159 spaces per final site plan 2279. The applicant shall place the new rubbish area enclosure at the southeast corner of the building on the facade. The gates of the rubbish area enclosure to face the street, US 1. Excuse me. The applicant has agreed to restore and enhance the approved landscape plan provided under site plan 2279. Sewer Division's comment that the applicant has submitted the acknowledgement letter dated 2/7/23. The applicant shall abide by any and all provisions of the outlined by the previous approval site plans. The gates of the trash enclosure should, oh, I got that right, face
Yep.
US 1. Appropriate signage and pavement markings shall be applied to the accessible space at the street. And the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Do I have a second?
Do you mind if I just clarify?
Sure,
Yes,
please do.
Mr. McRae, Commissioner McRae, do you want this to return to ARC?
Oh.
And do you want to note the enclosure, the 3 sides enclosure?
yes. Should we send this back to ARC? They wanted it was an electronic return. Is that
was-
correct, Ms. Anastasio? They wanted a,
I think they
Was it a
were,
ret-
well, I think they were thinking of a return to meeting, but only,
If there was
but
an
that
issue.
was before, P and Z took a look at it.
I would say we're done with, I would say we're done with this as long as the violation is addressed, the site plan conditions, well, we've agreed that the site plan conditions are met. Let's be done with it. If there's a
Okay.
further issue, we can explore it some more.
that's fine. I agree.
And then you had one other question, Marisa?
Did you want to note the enclosures?
Yes,
What
Mr.
you
McRae?
consider appropriate enclosure of it?
Yeah, so it should be a masonry material, 2 sides. Third side is the building facade, and the 4th side would be the gates.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. McRae?
Aye.
Mr. Lowe?
Aye.
And Albin is also, Mr. Levy, sorry.
Aye.
And Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Freehart. I
Thank you
hope this
all.
gets rid of it for forever and ever.
All
Um,
good. Thank you so
And
much.
now we go to the public hearing. Mr. Bazili doing a sound check with you.
Yes, hello, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Bazili. Okey doke. So with that, the public hearing, our first item on the public hearing is item number 3, Leonard and Joanne Phillips for a final site plan and special permit. This is for a 587 square foot addition and a rear deck at 220 Davis Avenue in the R6. The property is of note because it is 5,945 square feet in the R6 zone, which is normally 7,500 square feet. Mr. Peck, are you representing the applicant?
I am here, Tim Peck for the applicant. We were last before you at the January 10th hearing, which we addressed some various comments at that time, and were held open because of the sewer comments, which we have resolved since then. In comments from the briefing yesterday, the one item that we do need to address prior to zoning permit is provided agreement that will submit an as-built condition after the construction is completed, as per the 119 memorandum from Richard Feminella from Sewer Department, and I believe we've addressed the other comments. So I'll keep it short and sweet unless the commission has any other comments or questions.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
No.
All righty. Do I have any questions or comments from the public? This is on 220 Davis Avenue for a final site plan and special permit, 220 Davis Avenue. Please raise your virtual hand or hit *9 if you're on the phone. No. All right. With that, does anybody object to closing this item at this time? Seeing no objection, this item is therefore closed, and we will decide it at the end of the public hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Peck.
Thank you very much.
Our next application, the 4th application, is Tyler Mitchell for a final site plan and special permit to construct a pool house, pool and patio, which increases the site further above 150,000 cubic feet at 45 Burying Hill Road in the 4-acre zone. This is an 8-acre property. Representing the applicant is Mr. Romano.
Let me get myself all set. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. You know, we don't expect land tech to be good at tech.
Very
Sorry.
good.
Couldn't resist. I've been waiting for that one.
Good evening, everybody, or afternoon. I'm Pete Romano. I've been in front of you guys in probably 10 years, and now I'm back-to-back meetings. I'm with Land Tech. We're a site civil and environmental firm out of Westport, and we're representing Tyler Mitchell, who owns the house at 40. He and his wife Stephanie, who happen to be friends of mine as well, own the house at 45 Bering Hill Road. Cool house. If you had an opportunity to go out there, he took a barn, restored the barn, built a new home around the barn, about 6,500 square feet. They got approval back in 2018. He lived in one of the cottages while the building was going on. And then I think in 2020, he moved into the main house. And so he's been living there since 2020, and he's decided to put a pool and a pool house in. So we're going to break this up in two people are going to present it. We have Chuck Willett, the architect, with Brooks and Falatico out of New Canaan, who did the main house. I'm going to address a couple of the minor site issues. I think we resolved some of the things that conservation asked us to. I sat in on the work session yesterday, and I think some people might have been looking at an old plan. And then I think one of the commissioners had the new plan, because he kept on saying, I can't remember exactly who it was, but he kept on saying, I don't see any trees around the drainage, and he was right. Based on
But just so
Bianca's-
you know, we all get the same set of plans from you and they go into our OneDrive. So
No, I'm not suggesting that. I just
Yeah.
might have been there because we submitted a new set of plan on the 25th of January. That's
Yeah.
all. And it was based on Bianca from your office, from your staff, who cited some of the things that what came from Conservation Office. So if I can share the screen real quick. Can you folks see that by any chance?
This is Chairman. do
not
you
yet.
want-
Try it
Okay.
again.
It should be,
Yeah, he got made co-host after he started trying to share.
Okay, cool. I didn't know if you wanted me to share my screen.
I got it.
I don't know. For some reason, Patrick trusts with Mr. Romano.
Got it?
it's not Mr. Romano, it's everybody, Madam Chair. Trust everyone.
Well, good.
All right, I'm gonna
Alrighty.
walk you through this. I don't want to belabor the point on the site stuff. I think we've addressed everything, but I just want everybody to get a picture. Here's Tyler's house. This is Topping Pond. This is what it looks like right now. And so here's the property line. To give you an idea, it goes into Topping Pond. And then we drop it's a little bit hard to see, but you'll see a site plan in a minute. But there's the pool house and the pool. I jumped ahead of myself a little bit, I'm sorry. The addition, and while we're in front of you, is for a final site plan approval and special permit. We were down the path for a zoning permit for the pool and the pool house, and in that process, we learned that we needed to go and apply because we are over the cubic or the volume with this pool house. The interesting thing, the other house or the main house was also over the volume calculations. I think your regulations say 150,000. We're at 250,000, but that includes the house, the barn, the other cottage that's on a piece of property. What we're proposing is about a 1,500 square foot pool house. A pool that's about 900 square feet, a pergola, a covered pergola that I think is about 1,000 square feet. Which we showed on here. And I know the comment, I just wanted to show you this for edification. The comment was made that we felt, the conservation felt we were going to impact the roots on the trees. And I just call your attention, we use the shed, we recognize that was a potential when we put the infiltrators near those trees. These infiltrators are only 12 inches deep, so they're pretty shallow above it. But subsequently, based on those comments, we actually took and shoved those infiltrators. So they're right off the edge of the covered pergola. So that's out of it's out of there. Should have no impact at all. Won't have any impact at all. So that drainage collects the runoff from the patio and the bocce court and even the roof from the pool house. And I'm showing you these pictures because I know another comment was made by the Conservation Commission staff that she felt, or they felt, we should put plants someplace around the pool house. And I just want you to understand what Mr. Mitchell's intention was. This house basically, in the summertime, when the meadow is flourishing, this house and all of his improvements there kind of rise up out of a meadow. He doesn't cut all of his lawn. He cuts the lawn around the home, but the areas towards the pond and along the wetlands are all left as a meadow. And so I'm showing you this. This is how it is right now. It's very stark landscaping. It's gotten happens to be the other side of the house from where the pool is going, but I have some other pictures. And here's the center. This is the new house. This is the barn that was there that he restored. You can see it with my little cursor there running around. And then this is inside that courtyard. And you can see that generally he's kept the landscaping pretty sparse. You know, for a reason. So this picture is, if you can see this fence, this is the fence along the back of that. This is essentially where the pool house, and there's probably this edge here is where the edge of the pool is going to be. But you can see this is all open meadow, and you can see that it's trimmed now. He cuts the meadows probably twice a season. But you can see the different colors in the lawn, and that's because this at one time was taller grass. This is the more manicured lawn. And then I would just call your attention to this. Another comment was made yesterday, and it might have appeared in the staff report from Conservation, but this actually is along the property line that ends up being the westerly property line. And there's pretty heavy vegetation right now. There's stone wall there. These are all the deciduous trees that at one time the infiltrators were in close proximity to them. They're no longer there. This is a big open lawn. There's a big stand of pine trees, happens to be on the neighbor's backyard there. So I you know, we'll still take your recommendations, but we feel that we've addressed how we wish the house to be landscaped, which is minimal. And so I'm just going to take you through some of the logistics of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chuck, the architect. As I mentioned, we were down the path to get our zoning permit. We received the Public Works approval for our storm drainage. We got an approval from Inland Wetlands Agency. We're more than 130, the closest point to any kind of activity from our new development or from our pool house. It's 135 feet. We actually only disturb about 3,000 square feet total. Some grading and stuff, some temporary, which is going to be grading, and then the actual house. And I'm looking at my notes, I'm sorry. The house and pool and bocce court is about 3,400 square feet. So the temporary disturbance is about 1,200, which is the grading associated with the infiltrators, and just to make the grading work from where we place the pool, and then the final grading and stuff. So it's minimal, as I said, disturbance. We've got a favorable response from the zoning enforcement officer. This pool house is going to have a small septic system. We received approval from the health department. And I think, like I said, we were ready to go get our zoning permit when this issue became apparent to us. And so we went back to the architect we're working closely with, and they kind of took it from there. And I'm going to turn this over to Chuck Willett from
Mr. Romano, before you move on to the architecture,
Sure.
just a quick question. Can you bring up a close-up view of the site plan of the spread around the pool house itself?
right here.
Yeah, if you can zoom in there, that'd be great.
Yeah, give me a minute.
While you're doing that,
Go
we
ahead.
didn't have a landscape plan that was provided between the proposed pool house and the street. Can you explain if the landscape that's there? Is there any visual screening between the street and the building itself for privacy, the pool, that kind of thing?
There isn't anything substantial right there. There's deciduous trees that are there. Let me see if this shows it a little bit better over here. So here we are. Right here is Berrying Hill. Minimal. There's some deciduous trees there. No stand of evergreens or anything like that. It's just what's there right now. It's been some big old deciduous trees along the property.
Okay, and the facade, the back your street facade, that's kind of interesting. I was confused for a little
Yeah.
while. The street
I'll-
facade of the pool house itself
Can I
is,
do this? Can I let Chuck take you through? Let me answer.
Well, I think, I just wanted to stop you a second, Mr. Romano, because we tend not to spend a lot of time trying to change people's architecture for their private homes. We
Right.
feel that as long as they're compliant with the regulations, it's not something that goes to the ARC. What we're more focused on is the sustainability of those homes, the
Sure.
sensitivity to the topography which they're being built. So the energy efficiency. So we're more concerned about their impact on the community rather than their aesthetics. So unless Mr. McRae has a specific question for the architects in terms of those topics and anything that really pertains to regulations, your design is really up to you.
I just, my question was actually, I
Yes,
think
sir,
it's
go ahead.
something Mr. Romano could answer.
Okay,
The street facade of the new pool house is about or behind the street facade of the existing residence. Is that correct? So
of the
it's
barn.
pretty well set back.
It is. It's the house is almost in line with it. You can see here, this is the house
Mhm.
and this is the pool house. It's way, the barn is right, if you've been by there, the barn is probably 10 feet off the property line. This is all barn. It's beautiful. It's very, you actually drive through it to get to the courtyard. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that is right up against the road. This is all open area here. And you can see, we didn't color them in, but there's, like I said, there's some deciduous trees along the front. Nothing, no screening, no apervites, pines, evergreens along the front property line.
Right. And the first floor elevation is pretty deep into the grade.
It is. Very good. Yes, I was just gonna say that, and Chuck will take you through that. It is, it's set down. It's got a nice facade on the back of it, very similar to the house. And I put Chuck's elevations and floor plans and stuff into this presentation, and he can take you through that. Yeah, I'm not the aesthetic guy.
okay, but again, we're not gonna focus on your aesthetics
I
because
appreciate it. I understand.
we try to respect people's private property rights on the aesthetics issue. We are more interested in the sustainability, your landscaping plan, your energy efficiency. We're much more interested in the impact on regulations we have in place and on the community as a whole, what your demand is on our infrastructure system, et cetera. So I'm sure it's a beautiful design, but that's not our job here.
Right.
Okay, so
understand.
Mr. McRae, unless you have something specific on those questions, I mean, I know you love
No,
design,
it's just,
so
it's just a zoning recommendation
perfect.
that the floor plan is on borderline of actually developing this as a secondary residence.
Yes,
I would just be actually super duper careful as this is laid out and presented for a zoning permit that the kitchen and separate rooms, et cetera, are compliant. So this does not wind up being a second residence. From the looks of it, I'm seeing open shelves of and things of upper cabinets, a dishwasher, so on and so forth. I think you just want to make sure you're not wandering into iffy
full
ground.
kitchen. Now, you
Right.
don't have a comment on this from the zoning enforcement officer. He was satisfied with how you've laid it out. But, that's, I think Mr. McRae is reminding you to stop there. Our comments yesterday pertain more to the impact of tree removal, landscaping, conservation comments, the EMAC comments. So that's where we
I
would
got
like to guide the conversation.
And then we were both on it, both Chuck and I were on yesterday, as we heard you. No trees were harmed during the design of this house. We're not taking any trees down to put this here. I showed you that basically where it's going is a big open lawn right here. So I think all those things you said are things that Chuck is prepared to address. And then if it's
All
okay,
right.
I'm here,
Okay.
I'll be here all night. I can answer
All
any-
right. Okay, would you take down the screen share then?
Well, you know what? I think he's gonna, well, yes, I will. And then I think.
I mean, unless, I'm trying to keep us out of the design element
I
and,
understand. But
okay.
some of the things that were brought up yesterday during your work session, we talked about it afterwards.
okay,
It
all
was-
right.
so-
So Mr. Willett, whenever you're ready, we'll throw up the screen share again.
Sorry, I gotta pipe in one more time and then I'll shut up. He probably wants to share the screen also, Pat. So,
Actually, if Marissa, if you could bring it up,
Yeah,
okay, fine.
that would be great.
I
And
can
I
do
won't get bogged down in the design. I think, but what Peter was saying was, in listening to your comments yesterday, there's a couple of things that I wanted to address. One is the actual placement of the pool house within the natural topography. So you will see that with exiting the existing house, we proceeded up a few steps. We can probably just go to 101, Marissa, of the architectural plan.
Keep going. They're towards the end.
Well, that'll work. You can
we
zoom
go.
out slightly. Yeah, if you zoom out slightly from there. Yeah, that's perfect. So if you, we can start from the right side of the page. You'll see the double doors. That's exiting the main residence. When we step out toward grade, we actually started to ascend. So rather than excavating and building all of this terrace work, the pool work and everything into the ground, and remediating, an immense amount of soil and disturbances, what we did is we worked within the natural topography between the existing house on the right and then the tennis court / parking area that's on the upper left. So working from right to left, we were able to terrace this design in several different ways. So going up the first 7 steps, you actually end up at this pool level. X is the pool house, and then you meander up another, I think it's like 10 steps, and that arrives at the natural topography. So this thing is really fitting into that kind of that rolling picture that Peter kind of showed everybody. So we kind of felt, we feel like from the street view, if we go to the 200 series, so this probably is maybe 2 or 3 pages later, Marissa. I can kind of show you what that front facade looks like, just how it is nestled into the ground. Right, up one. One more. Yeah, right. That's
Yeah.
actually the backside. Sorry, that's a cross section. So there it is.
Look.
Yep. So the rear elevation number 3 that you see right there, you see the natural topography going from high to low, from left to right. So working within that topography, we feel like we're being very responsible in this design. And then just as far as some of the other comments that the commission made in their discussion yesterday was energy. We did a couple studies. Unfortunately, we're looking at a 1,080 square foot heated space that's of seasonal use plus the pool. When you start getting into looking at the financial responsibility for the Mitchells of either putting a geothermal system in, even if we went to like an electric heating for the pool, there's some inefficiencies in that where we might be on the borderline of having to upgrade the entire electrical service for the property. And again, when we start looking at this from a seasonal use perspective and a little over 1,000 square feet, it didn't feel like it had call it a green approach. It felt like it would be made a statement, but it would be spending a lot of money and a lot of effort. And I kind of echo what Peter Levy said yesterday too, and the cost versus efficiency and the size of the pool house. Regarding solar panels, there's not enough roof in a south facing unless we start putting it on the on the barn that we all feel has architectural significance, and it's over the front setback line. So we're more than open to looking at going to the on-demand electric hot water heater. There is propane that's going to be spec'd for the pool. We thought there was some efficiency in just being able to feed off of that as well, but we're open to different suggestions from the commission.
And I guess, Mr. Willett, you couldn't put solar on the pergola. You're going to have that open with slats with green
It's
things
gonna be-
growing on it. Is that?
Yep.
Is that? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if we look at that too, it's also westerly facing. And as Peter pointed out, there's some very large growth along the stone wall. And then anything anything that even is remotely close to the eastern facing is in the shadow of the existing residence and barn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it was looked at, but again, with the natural roof lines and things that were not natural, the proposed roof lines, there's not a lot of area to capitalize.
Yeah, got it. Okay, related question.
Mhm.
You mentioned it was seasonal use, so, I assume what, May through October? So you would the assumption be that it wouldn't be occupied, say, in the dead of winter?
I mean, not daily. I mean, I can't speak for the Mitchells that they might not have, a gathering out there, or, maybe it would be neat to have a small Thanksgiving gathering, but definitely not, anywhere near the use where it's going to be, kept at 70 degrees throughout the winter.
Right. So, I mean, it might be worth exploring an air source heat pump as opposed to a propane boiler.
Happy to do that.
Keep the pollution down. Again, if it works for you guys, you know where our interest is and where we want to go here.
Understood.
But I take your point. It's a smaller project, but every little bit helps.
I completely agree. And 90% of the homes that we're involved in, we have geothermal, and I'm happy to say I have 2 projects right now that have 16 Tesla power walls and solar, and they were planned from the beginning, and we were able to get the right exposure. And we are a fan of the movement. Unfortunately, just again, the size and the financial responsibility seems a little tight.
May I ask?
Go ahead, please,
how
Mr. Yeski.
The house that was built, how is that heated?
Electric and propane.
The propane is for
Heat.
cooking, or is
And
it-
heat.
and heat? And that's how the older houses are also heated, the farmhouses?
I can't actually speak to that. I did not work on those. Sorry, sir.
And there's no
don't
heat
think
in
I-
the barn, I take it.
I think there's some electric heat just to temper it, but nothing that, I mean, since you drive through it, no, there's nothing again that's going to bring it up to 65 degrees. It was not fully insulated. New garage doors put in it. It was given definitely a facelift, a new roof, but no, it wasn't spray foamed and a livable type building. No. Tempered
And-
no more than what I would say like a garage would be.
Yeah, I think you heard us yesterday talk about longer term. We don't have regulations, but as folks build houses and expand them, we love for them to start thinking about their overall energy consumption. So that's why we were pushing.
Understood.
An obvious question is, if it's electric heat in the house, there's no way to extend that to the pool?
No, I'm sorry, for the house, there's just a couple baseboard heaters, I think, on the second floor of the garage. The rest is the propane. The main
They're
source
all
is propane.
Okay.
Um,
Well, it is the country, right?
Well, electric is usually more accessible in the back country than gas, but all right. Arn, did you have any further comments on the energy efficiency?
No, I didn't. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So the other issue was this question about the landscape plan. You're adding impervious surface and you're not offsetting it as conservation would have liked to have seen it offset. Do you have any comments on that?
We are implementing water quality. This is Pete Romano again from Land Tech.
Hello, Mr. Romano.
Yes, we are. We're implementing water quality measures. We've got pervious pavers on the deck, and we're collecting it in the infiltrators with a level lip spreader that discharges to the ground. I mean, again, it's a small impervious area on an 8-acre piece of property where we represent 2/10 of a total disturbance, 2/10 of an acre on 8 acres of land. I mean, it's consistent with what you do for a size structure like this. And it meets your regs. So it meets the Public Works drainage manual for water quality.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we don't push for a little more sustainability and things. That's, I fair warning that I told you that if for design, we only look at the regs, but as we begin to open up more towards people being conscious of the drain on infrastructure and heat island effect, that we
Sure.
we are pushing till we get
not-
better
Well,
Now,
well,
as you know, Mr. Romano, we have just done brand new landscape regulations. We've just completed them. So you came in before those were in effect. So this is an area where,
we'll take a look at it. Yeah.
okay. All right. Any other comments from the commission on this? I know we had the question on the kitchen, we had the energy efficiency, and we had conservation still looking for better low impact, more usage of low impact development. Mr. McRae, you had mentioned yesterday wanting to see a full landscape plan. It sounds like there is no landscape plan. It sounds
Yep.
like they're building the house and not doing anything else.
I guess that's, that's what we're hearing, yes. There's really nothing planned along the street. I understand the views to the pond across the meadow. That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
And the sparseness of the existing landscape plan in and around the house. I think my question was more of what was between the proposed and the street, and has explained nothing. So,
Madam Chairman, just an FYI, Mr. Mitchell's on the line. If you have questions from him, you can promote him to ask him some questions.
No, not really questions for him, but
Okay.
I hope he's hearing us say that
Yes.
we'd love him to be very much more environmentally conscious in anything he can do that that reflects a commitment to sustainability. We're just, at this point, we're just asking people to put their best
Sure.
foot forward. It's a lot of areas in which we don't have regulations, but we'd like to see people step up. And I know Mr. Mitchell has deep roots in Westport and in Greenwich, and cares a lot about, I imagine cares a lot about these communities. So I hope he's listening and knows where we're focused. So there being no further comment from the commission at this time?
I have just a real quick, just
Yes.
question.
Is this Mr. Willett? Hello, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, it is. It's
Did you
Trumpet
pronounce
Preston
it Willett
Polonica.
or Willett?
It is Willette.
Okay.
I do have a just a Google image up. It doesn't show the new house, but it does show the growth along the road. If you feel like that would be helpful, I think it definitely is a thicker than what a two-dimensional site plan representing.
So Mr. Willett, we tend to be people who always look at the Google Earth.
Sounds great.
So I suspect that we have all looked at it and many of us have driven by. That is kind of how we roll. So
Sounds great.
I don't think it's really necessary. It's just, we've got much beefier landscape regulations in place now. We're trying to get people to put deep rooted plants in. We're trying to get people to do more natives. Especially when you have a beautiful piece of property like this one, what can you do to enhance its contribution? I believe there are no other questions for the commission. I can turn to public comment. Okay, we have one speaker. It is at this point, if anyone else from the public wishes to speak on this application at 45 Burying Hill Road, please raise your virtual hand. If not, I am turning to our first speaker, which is Mr. Mark Pruner. Hello, Mr. Pruner. If you will unmute, you're all ready to go. Anybody else wishes to speak on this application, please raise your virtual hand.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and start video. Can you see?
Okay.
There we are.
There you go. Hello,
How are
Mr.
you?
Pruner.
How are you? Good. So I sent in some comments this afternoon. I don't
We may not all have seen them because they get distributed to us when they come in, but sometimes towards the end of the afternoon. So why don't you go ahead and recap?
Okay. I don't know if Marissa's able to put them up. There are several photos in there that I think might be useful.
Sure, just give me.
Okay.
I don't know if we heard Marisa, but that was a yes. We're gonna put
Yeah,
those up.
she's working on it. Yeah, we
Okay.
heard her. Yeah, we were giving her a breather.
So anyway, I'll go ahead and start. And if, when Marissa can get those photos up, I can refer to those. But basically, as Mr. Romano said, this is a proposal for a second increase in the size of the area there, up to 265,000 cubic feet. The special permit kicks in at 150,000 cubic feet. And I think this proposal epitomizes why you have a special permit for properties that have over 150,000 cubic feet of space being taken up. What I'd like to do is take you along Berrien Hill Road. By the way, we live across the street from the Mitchells, and we're not opposed to them putting in a pool. But you'll see our concern here in a little bit. This is the original farmhouse. I think it may date back to 1785, which is on the eastern side of the property. Looking at this picture, Lake Avenue is to your right, Round Hill is to your left. And the reason the house is there is because they put it close to the stream. If you move to the next picture, you'll see, so there is that little structure on the right was used as an office. I'm not sure what Tyler's using it for now, but you have this barn that was part of the Topping estate that's 114,000 cubic feet. And there's just enough room between the little office and the house that was there. So at the present time, you've got the original house and you've got the new house that the Mitchells built. If you could move on to the next picture. So it's actually hard to get the whole barn in one picture. It's so large. So this is looking from the southeast of the barn. That courtyard that Mr. Romano shows you is through that opening and then back behind the barn. Next picture, Marissa. So here's the barn showing the west side of the house. There's more house wrapped around the back, but they did a very nice job of not putting all of the large structures right on the road, which if you'll move to the next picture, you'll see what happened. So this is what is presently there. By the way, you all designated Berrien Hill as a scenic road. You can see the stone walls on both the south side and the north side of Berrien Hill. But if you look at the house there on the right, and the proposal is to make the pool house 22 feet tall. And if you look at the house on the right, several feet up from where the gutters are would be roughly the line of where this house would go. So it essentially will put another structure close to the road. And Marissa, if you'd move on to the next one. So right now, we where the pool house would go is to the right of the tennis court. By the way, you can see the one tree that's there now. The curious thing about this tennis court is that it doesn't have a fence around it. So that anytime you hit a ball, it runs off the back of the court. Either, at any time, a fence could be put around this, and if you put in a fence, you almost certainly will line it with those nylon windbreaks, which means this part of the road would be would also have a visual barrier. And if you would move on to the next photo, and you all can read the text. So this shows you what I'm talking about. This is from the work that Mr. Romano's firm did. If you look on the right, there's actually a little shed. There is the original farmer's house. There's the office. There's the barn, there's the new house that was added with the courtyard, and then comes the new pool house, pool and patio. And then next to that, at the present time, it's just bare asphalt with the tennis net there. But you've got this whole line of houses that are jammed up. And if you would move down to the next photo. So this is a rough approximation. The area in the front there turns out to be roughly about 1.88 acres. All of the structures are proposed to be in that area. The portion of the pond they own is 2.65 acres, and it leaves about 3.4 acres. There's plenty of room on this property to move this back a little further. Also, if you look, and I can send you a higher res version of this, but if you look at the neighboring properties, they're all set back between 150 and 397 feet. This is the 4-acre zone. Most of these lots, as you can see, the 45 Berrien Hill Road is 8.4 acres. The neighboring property is either larger. Most of these lots are over 4 acres. And when you drive down Berrien Hill, you get a very nice feel of backcountry, country houses, except for this one strip, which gives you the feeling of a commercial zone with large structures jammed close together with little spaces in between them. The pool house would further eliminate that, and the design of it makes it even worse in that they have this very steep roof on top of it. So it's totally out of character with the neighborhood, with the setbacks that we have. There are several things in the special permit standards that I think this doesn't conform with as proposed. And as I say at the bottom, Mercy, if you just go down a little bit further, we're not opposed to the pool or the pool house. Actually, yeah. So anyway, there's the picture you saw before. There's actually a proposal to raise that area a little bit. But this is my understanding, I believe, of what the pool house would look like. If you're walking along Berrien Hill, you can see lightly outlined there on the right is the present house, and you can see how tall that is in relation to the present house. What we're suggesting is, along with the Conservation Commission, that they consider making this a one-story with a flat roof, potentially putting a roof garden on top. If you move it back, the property naturally slopes away from the street, and if you take off the steep high roof, you would have a structure that is much less massive looking in a property that's already over by 100,000 cubic feet of the 100,000 cubic feet of the property that's where you do the special permit starting at 50,000. The way this is done would make this even a larger cubic foot area. And the thing that's the biggest issue, I think, to the value of the houses around there, to the view of Topping Pond, which is a historic pond, and just that whole area is a problem. It de-emphasizes the special historic nature. It shows it obstructs the views for promoting conserving the value of the buildings. I actually think this would actually devalue the property, because it's going to be a lot tougher to sell with all of the properties right up against the road. Now, the pool house does conform with the setback requirements. Berrying Hill is only 30 feet wide. As I said, it's a designated scenic road. The pool house is set back 85 feet, but visually with its height and its width, it essentially plugs the only area on that whole length of the property, with the exception of the wetlands area, which is down the hill. And I don't really see any reason that's necessary, and it materially adversely affects the adjacent properties, all of which are set back by 150 to 397 feet.
Mr. Pruner, in looking at the site plan, it seems if this project was pushed back, it would clearly impinge in the wetlands upland review of 100 feet and the existing septic system. Were you aware of that?
Well, as I said in the report, the 100-foot is not a, well, our most recent inland wetlands commissioner put that in, and it's become some kind of new setback standard. What it isn't. It simply gives inland wetlands the ability to review something. The old standards were 35 or 50 feet. As Mr. Romano says, the closest this structure gets is 135 feet from the wetlands, so they could easily push it back 35 feet and would not be within that area. The sewer sites, from what I saw, I didn't see them on the drawings. The ones that I did see were out to the right of the house, but yeah, that one I didn't have a comment for.
Right. As for the flat roofed building, both the old buildings and the new residents have peaked roof, gable end, that kind of thing. Understanding streetscape, wouldn't a flat roof building be more out of place? Wouldn't it be much more contemporary than the gable ends?
Look,
as you travel along the street?
Couple of things on that. This was originally the equestrian area, and there was, I believe it was a chicken coop behind the house, which was long and low and flat roofed. And as I said, the other thing is, it would be more energy efficient if you were, as you can see from this final drawing here, the house is already set back into the slope. If you moved it further back, it would minimize the impact on the streetscape, and it would, if you would also set it deeper into the slope, and you would make it more energy efficient. If you took off that high roof, dropped it down about 3 or 4 feet, and put the roof garden on top that the Conservation Commission is recommending, it would be practically invisible from the road. And what would be there would look like similar to a long, low shed that was there originally, but out of sight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pruner. Nick, did you have any more questions for Mr. Pruner?
No, none at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pruner. Does anybody else from the public wish to comment on this application? All right. So let me synopsize what Mr. Pruner has to say to us. It's a special permit application. Under the special permits, as you know, there's the issue of consistency with the neighborhood, et cetera, consistency with the structures in the neighborhood. At the same time, it does meet the setback requirements. It is within, this project is within the regulations. So the question before you is, do you believe that that we should consider this under the special permit standards relative to its fit with the neighborhood, or to continue developing as this property, as I understand it, has previously developed? And I raise that with you guys. That's how I see the issue. You guys aren't very talkative tonight, you know that? Okay.
We're thinking.
Oh, you're thinking. Okay, I just didn't see the smoke. All right. So, if you don't have strong feelings about it, then you go to the zoning regulations. If you're looking at 617D on the special permit standards, which I know you all sleep with under your pillows, is this an issue for you under the special permit standards? That's the question. Does anybody have a strong reaction to this? I see Mr. Pruner's point, but it is the way this property has basically been developing. So it's organic to this property, and that's where I'm struggling. Mr. Lowe, go ahead.
Well, I should say, I confess that I have not been out there. Don't
But
have a.
Why? You went to every other property this weekend. Go ahead. Okay, you haven't been out there.
I thought I
We
covered.
can leave this open. We have time to leave this application open. We only had to open it tonight. If the commission would like an opportunity to do a physical drive-by and consider 617.
I didn't say that. That was
Okay.
just a preface to my comments.
Oh, okay. But I was kind of
So,
leading in the, yeah.
That may be where we're going, but
Okay.
I haven't seen it. From the description and what I could understand from the earlier presentation from the applicant's representative, that this does have, it did seem to me that these buildings were up close to the road. But being the original one being from the 18th century and being historic and the like, I can understand that. The notion of having additional development begin to kind of seal off the view from this historic road seems a bit troubling just in general. We're not here, I guess, to weigh in on our personal views on what's what. We have to abide by the regulations. But if there's any kind of wiggle room here, I would ask the applicant whether they, and I'm sure they've considered it, whether they have considered any adjustments that would take into account Mr. Pruner's comments, i.e. specifically some movement away from the road of that pool house and perhaps some reduction in height of the roof line.
Okay, now, as you know, case law protects public views, not private views. I don't know where this falls. Patrick, do you have a comment on that?
I mean, generally speaking, it's views enjoyed from public places, right? So it would be roads and like. However, this is not the ocean and not, it's probably more obscure in this instance than it would be on the ocean. And I'd have to refer to law department about, case law and precedent on that type of issue. I think just to add to the comment, I think the citing of this is somewhat of a necessity because although Mr. Pruner is not wrong that the setback is a mandatory review area, what it does though is Wetlands Agency has the right to refuse, work within that. So while it's not a setback, it has become a de facto one, and one that, we can't certainly invite the applicant to go into without them going to the Wetlands Agency and getting their consent as well.
And in
But
fact, on that, we discussed yesterday on a different application where wetlands had actually denied a permit because of the 100-foot setback issue. So
Do we not have
go
a
ahead.
35-foot cushion here or not?
Well, but they have the 100-foot review line. And the issue with the 100-foot review is that they have been unhappy with applications in this regard. I have a feeling that Mr. Romano is going to jump through the screen if we don't let him talk. We need to train him that when the commission is arguing with each other, we ignore everybody else. But okay, go ahead, Miss.
Arguing. This is not an argument.
No, it is. Well,
If I wanted an
debating.
argument, I would have gone to the argument.
No.
No, debating with each other where we go with the special permit, does anybody have a concern that rises to us? Honestly,
No, but
leaving
I
this-
would like to state that actually, I think understanding the nature of the existing buildings that are remaining out there, the small office, the barn, the home, that it seems that there's the property owner has kind of gone out of their way to maintain that, which is part and parcel to what this section of Bering Hill Road is all about. This barn right on the street, those small buildings, almost to the effect there that the new structure cleverly is behind the existing barn. That you pass through the existing barn, it was never touched, just saved and renovated to the new building behind it. And that it seems that the pool house is keeping with that kind of idea to be behind the existing buildings, which are right on the street. I think if anything, that's a kind of a sensitive way to address the layout of this site. Everything is on the street, but what's on the street is remaining, not being touched, remains the fabric of the streetscape, and that everything is new, is subservient and behind all of it. So they're not imposing, any contemporary aspect to it. It's always, behind that line of the existing buildings. And to me, that actually kind of, states something here that, there was some thought put into how the whole site would be laid out to maintain Bering Hill as it is, or as you would pass by it.
The other thing I wanted to add is there was a criticism that all the buildings were close to each other. I think that's a positive myself, because they're keeping much more land open and not covering it all with different buildings. So I've used that as a positive aspect of this application, and also saving the barn. I think that probably adds some value to the surrounding area. It's a lovely barn.
I think it's the conversely, if a property owner came in and took a look at this and said, wow, this is a great piece of property, there would have nothing to stop from, raising all of the structures that are there and building, a larger building right on the street, a larger new building right on the street.
So the way the site is and I think, Nick, you were going there with this, what you're saying is, and I'm looking at the Google Earth right now. I don't know, Patrick, Marisa, if you want to toss up the Google Earth for Bering Hill right now. If what you're saying is that the way the new building's being sited, it will not materially change the vista from the street.
I think it's going to, if you're at the street, okay, say across the street in the lawn, you're not going to get that view that Mr. Pruner had provided a photograph of. The pool house would be there, but I think actually in that view, you actually can see. Actually, one of the photographs is very good. You actually see where the house is. The new house is relationship to the street and the barn, and how far back off the street it is. And I think that actually, is an indication of the respect
Thank you,
for the
Marissa.
existing structures.
And then go to Street View, the little man.
My street view is from 2013. I don't know if somebody
Yeah,
has.
mine is too. It doesn't show the new house,
Yeah.
and the new house sticks out a little bit. As you said,
And come back the other way.
Marita, I mean, we
Yeah.
only had to open this up. Maybe we ought to think about it for a while,
Okay,
because Google doesn't really.
right.
This Google Earth doesn't help.
no. Okay, so let's do that, you guys. We can, we'll let Mr. Romano talk. Poor guy, we've shut him down. I would like to, I see the charm. I'd love to see if this is 2013. I'd love to leave it open and give us a chance to consider this.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think
right.
actually, Mr. Pruner's photographs are great. I think actually a drive-by, pull in and kind of walk the street would be a really good idea.
Okay, Mr. Levy, would you like to comment? Okay, you can take it down. Mr. Levy?
Yes, I was just trying to think about the continuity of the site and it being historically a agricultural um, um, use. And so there's an agglomeration of buildings that were part of this use. And now there are new buildings that are being added to it. So it gets to the point where it's getting rather extensive and rather large. So from a point of view of just the kind of the natural growth of any site, and it makes some kind of sense that, you know, this is a property that is very large and has very large structures on it, and the additive nature of living there and changing the use and adding more buildings is a way of reusing an existing the existing buildings and repurposing them. So this is kind of a very organic and natural idea about development as far as I look at it. But the thing that Mr. Pruner brings up is relevant in that if you go to Rio and you go to the
favela.
Yeah, and you go along the waterfront, and there are 2 miles of these
The skyscrapers.
Industrial at the port. There is 2 miles of these warehouses along the water.
Yes. Oh, I know where you are. Okay, go ahead.
And you get the sense that there's when is this going to end?
Yes.
Because it goes on forever and ever and ever. So what they did in order to make that experience, instead of it being monotonous, those walls for 2 miles have become murals. And it is just an incredible experience of repurposing an area and making it giving it a new life, because now the way that it's being used now is it's very trafficked, and while you're sitting there in a traffic jam, you get to look at these amazingly large murals. So the reference I'm trying to make here is that there's nothing wrong with what the applicant is doing. But we'd love the applicant to consider how it fits in with the neighborhood and how it works with the site. I think that it may need a little bit more jiggering in order to.
But before we ask them for that, I think we said it all. We've just said it all. Traditionally, New England farm type of architecture was close to the road. That's how the development, that's what would be organic. It's close to the road, and you would add there. Always has been that way. Now you begin to expand a lot, and you come back to, as you're expanding and you've got a pretty significant group of structures on, albeit a very large piece of property, you then say, where do we stand with 617? And what I would then say to you guys is, look, it's incumbent on us, I believe, to leave this open. It's only a must open tonight. We leave it open. We take a look at it, and you all of us think about 617D. And we say to ourselves, so given that, where do we think it falls with being in scale with and compatible with surrounding uses, buildings, etc., streets and open space? Does it preserve the features? And here's what's important: having his special historic, cultural, or architectural merit, doesn't adversely affect the residential uses, all of those things. Does it preserve and enhance important features of the environment? And how does it work in with our town? And let's take a look, because we've had someone raise the question from the public, and we owe it to our residents to say, if somebody raises a question and there's a regulation that applies to it, we consider it. I'm sorry, Mr. Romano, I still haven't let you talk, but here you go.
Thank you. I didn't want to be rude and raise my hand. I just wasn't sure.
No, because I was going to slap you around.
I was, and I bet you could.
Yeah,
but
my
I
hand
was-
goes right through the computer.
I wasn't sure with your format. A lot of times the applicant gets to sum up just a little bit. I just want to answer some questions. I thought commissioners brought up some good points. Mr. Pruner brought up some good points, put a nice little presentation together. I know he's got some real estate background, so it was well
He does
done.
indeed.
But, you know, this is Tyler Mitchell's property. He's got some good suggestions, but
Yes,
Mitchell and the architects and me worked on this for the last year and a half to put this here. And you've said it many times, this conforms to the planning and zoning regulations for the town of Greenwich. And while he's right, they could potentially work in that regulated upland review area. But the first thing conservation will say to you, and just a little side note, Pat Sesto used to work for Land Tech, your former inland wetlands director. What happens when you stick your house or something in the upland review areas? Inland wetlands people say to you, you have a prudent alternative, move it
Right.
out of there. So we picked a prudent alternative.
Yeah.
And there is a septic system that is directly 50 feet down gradient from us, which you need to maintain that separating distance in order to build whatever. you
and
know?
that's the points we were making, because
So,
we know
right,
where,
so there's all
yeah.
these things, we squeeze it
We,
into all
we
these
know
little
where
things.
wetlands, we know where wetlands
Right.
has been heading with this. We couldn't
Yeah.
agree with them more. We
Gotcha.
are so glad that they're a state agency, that they're an agency controlled by state rules, and that they can protect our wetlands because they're extensive in Greenwich.
Look.
But I think that there's also nothing to be lost. Patrick, our agendas are finally a little easier now. We can fit this application on our next agenda.
We can. I just would like to ask:
Yeah,
is there specific items that you think the applicant should be looking to address, or have you said them all? And that's
You know, I
awesome.
think we said it all.
Okay. That's fair.
We've said it all, and now we just want to do a drive-by and
Gotcha.
then say, hey,
Right.
we looked at how it looks. We've considered 617D, and here's our very carefully thought out answer about what fits, what is consistent. And it's just a question of, I had frankly only looked at it on Google Earth.
What?
So I know,
Criticize me?
yeah, because that's the best form of defense.
Can I make just some parting comments and then I'll
Of course, you could make
Actually,
fun-
ride
Mr.
off-
Romano,
I'll
Mr.
ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Wait, Mr.
Um,
Romano, before you make
Yeah.
the comments, when you return, I see tennis court.
Yep.
I see parking court on plans. Just when you come back, let us know what's going on with how that's working. Is it a tennis court? Is it a parking lot? So on and so forth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to that
Okay.
point, I was going to suggest, I got 2 points. One, I was going to suggest if it's appropriate and you can do it from a legal perspective, we could stake this in the field and we can have a field walk, all of us.
We
right?
would be, yeah, we'd be happy to do that. It is
Okay.
sometimes hard to get us all at the same time, and I don't want to
We'll go
push you back
multiple
on an
times.
agenda,
Okay.
but
we'll go
we
multiple times.
love doing site walks.
Okay.
It's one of our favorite things.
Well, this is
We
a good
love
one to walk.
tromping around. So,
Honestly, this is a good piece of property to walk, and I'm just gonna
All
say 2 more things. When Tyler built the house to begin with, he was lauded. He was lauded for placing the house in such a way so that it didn't encumber or infringe upon the historical value of the barn. And so now we're talking about where the pool house gets placed. And the last thing, we do a lot of shoreline development and stuff, and the people behind you invariably say, you're ruining my view. And
Right.
my response to them is, it's actually not your view.
that's right.
The Mitchells bought this piece of property. It's
Yeah.
their view. And before the Mitchells bought it, there was only about 30 feet of open area where somebody.
The case law to which I was referring is very specific to water views from her neighbors, and those neighbors lost.
Right. It's a
They,
misnomer. It's a
so
misnomer. You
now
gotta do it,
that
right.
said, we had an application maybe 10 years ago where we cited that case law, where the private view did not prevail. And then the applicant offered to change his site plan because he wanted to accommodate his neighbors. So that's a decision an applicant could always make, but we're fully aware of the case law on it. And that's why I was
Sure.
reminding everybody. Anything else, Mr.
Thank
Romano?
you. I'm good. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And thank you, Mr. Willett. You're like the valley, right? He's like yeah, right?
No, that's Willamette.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. I used to call it. No, it's
Well, just-
Willamette. It's Willamette. That's the thing.
Just
Okay.
along with what Peter said.
Yes, sir.
You know, he was, you know, it was such an amazing thing what the Mitchells did. And the reality is, if we had not saved that barn and he had not saved that barn from a cubic standpoint, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and then the barn is cool. There's no question the barn is cool. We get that. And that's where we were saying, hey, they're trying to keep it. It's really good. So let us look at it and then
Absolutely. Appreciate
thank
all
you
the
very
comments.
much. Thank you.
very much.
All right, so for our next application, it's Patrick, I'm going to preempt you a little bit. Normally staff would lead into this, but the next application is for a regulation to require electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the zoning regulations. And we are doing this because of a state law that was passed in which municipalities are to do this. And what we got into a discussion yesterday is that some of the wording that had gone into our regulation was not completely in line anymore with the state law. Among the issues we raised was that the state law in certain parts gives absolutely no flexibility. There is no opt-out provision in the state law. And we had made the regulation sound a little too soft in an area. So what we discussed yesterday is that we're going to talk about it today, get any public comment that's out there, and revise the regulations so that it meets our purposes more. The only change that we would make to what the state is asking at this point is it's twofold. That the first one is that the state speaks of commercial. First of all, the state law goes and requires this infrastructure and requires the state to go to an electric vehicle fleet in a certain time frame, and it's a 30-page bill. In so doing, it requires state buildings to be doing things, to be adding EV infrastructure as they're built. But the state law doesn't speak to municipal buildings. And we believe that the intent is very clear. Did I say that right, Arn?
Yeah, you're fine.
That the intent is very clear that municipal and state buildings should comply with the law. So it's our interpretation of that. The second thing is that the state only speaks to schools that have state funding. And we believe that given how prevalent private schools are in our municipality, we should also be considering non-state funded schools. So those are the two things that we would add, is the municipal buildings and private schools. And then the third thing we talked about is, as long as we're requiring infrastructure, that we would require the chargers to actually be in place, because that incremental cost is minimal. And honestly, if you have an electric car in town, it can be very frustrating sometimes that there is no place to charge it easily, unless you go to Darien or, by the way, the town hall parking lot. Those are my two go-tos. So it feels scarce sometimes. So those are the issues that we've talked about. We want to bring it back to all the wording being consistent with the state law. And those are the three areas in which we would open it up a bit. Do I have any comments from the commission?
Well, just want to add that part of this is a response. What we're thinking of going beyond state law is market demand. So we've gotten some information. There are more EVs or electric vehicles in Greenwich than any other town, 1,500 as of July of last year. EVs in Connecticut are growing 30 to 40%. So we want to get ahead of growth in this market. We've also learned from Mr. Yesky, I guess, Cadillacs are only going to have electric vehicles. I know Volvos are in a couple of years only going to go electric. And looking at the number of certainly Volvos in town, there's going to be more demand for EV chargers. And I'll leave it at that.
And we know, as Mr. Levy reminded me again today, we know that the great frustration with all this kind of legislation is, on the one hand, we're seeing a trend towards electric vehicles, but on the other, we know from having lived on this planet for a while, that next week, next year, a brand new technology could come up that is much better, much more efficient. And the state says, oh, forget we ever said that. And back we go to a different law. But there it is. So we're going to stay pretty close to the state law, except for some of these areas where we think the state law really intended. And that's going to be the discussion that we have, but we're going to word it that way, close to the state law, with the understanding that on the commission, there is a debate about whether the future will really be for the Tesla type of vehicle we're seeing out there, where that's really going to be it or not. It's so many things. We were all going to sleep on waterbeds in the 60s, right?
Oh, thank God
some of us did.
I really tried hard to come up with the flakiest. I thought about pet rocks.
We were drowned.
Mr. Yeski, first of all, Mr. Yeski, can you just hang on a second, because Mr. Levy had his hand up first. Mr. Levy, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to be mindful of the idea that I think market forces is a key here, and I don't think we need to step forward too far here. I think that the market will tell us what to do. We don't have to anticipate it so much. And I don't think that we need to put any burden on the municipality in particular, but also the private schools. I just don't know why we would want to push them in that direction. They know what it makes sense for them. So it's just a word of caution about putting something in the reg.
Okay, so I mean,
about it.
And here's the thing about the municipality, and what we can do in the interim while we're rewriting it, the Energy Management Advisory Committee, which was formed by the municipality itself, it's a First Selectmen's Committee, and was, I believe, originally formed by Peter Tessie. It could have just been Fred, but the whole purpose of it was to get the municipality to focus more on energy efficiency and reduce energy costs, electric costs specifically. A huge amount of our town budget, a very large part of our town budget is for. So what I suggest we do is, we did once before, but let's reach out once again to EMAC and talk to them some more about how they feel about this. And the second one is, we can talk to Mr. Romano from DPW, and we can say, how do you feel about that? The EV charger that I routinely use is the one in Town Hall, because the municipality did one on its own. So those are the things to think about. I agree with you. We don't want to sort of go off into the deep end. We want to be compliant with the law, because it's good for Greenwich to be a good citizen, but we also want to do stuff that works. Any other comments? Mr. Yeski?
No, I think you said it.
Madam, whatever your name is.
A little more research. It's true there might be other technologies coming along, but the EV technology is clearly here and expanding. So we need to do something. The 10% for municipal, I mean, there's nothing right now, right? And the state law doesn't want it, or doesn't specify anything. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, let's do some more research. I was going to suggest some other sources. There's a whole issue about chargers and Tesla and just a bunch of issues we need to dig into a little bit more.
And what we could do is what we've done with other things. We stick to the law, and we require what's in the law, and with it in mind that we will go farther as the law evolves and as technology evolves. That's workable for us. Yes.
One thing for the record.
Yes,
I
sir.
have no idea what Cadillac's going to do.
But it sounded really good that you had a contact at Cadillac.
No. I have a contact at Mercedes. Let's get this straight. And I said that Mercedes has quit investing any new capital in internal combustion engines. Mercedes invented the automobile, so it's significant.
What did Henry Ford do?
What's that?
Mass
What about
produced it.
Henry
Assembly
Ford?
line, assembly
Henry
No,
line.
Ford
Henry
only
Ford
produced it?
came 50 years after Mercedes invented the auto. He mass produced cars. He
Got
didn't
it.
invent.
Okay, so Mercedes is leading, and they've always been leading edge in technology, and we know that. So it's things to think about, you guys.
The other thing is that, just to give you an idea of how technology changes, these EV stations that we're thinking of wanting to promote, there's a new battery technology coming out of Israel, which will probably obviate the need for these stations. So we don't know what to expect.
Right.
And yeah, it's okay to do things, but we should just be mindful of the cost of doing them.
Absolutely. And we don't want to, it's the same thing we said, we know that. And people ask you back in the old days where energy efficiency was very costly. So absolutely, that's an excellent point. We don't want to get people spending a ton of money that they don't need to spend.
But we
So-
are with this suggested language, aren't we
Pretty close. Yeah, we're going to stay we're going to stay close to the law and just interpret.
essentially conforming to the law?
Yeah,
So-
well, and we have to conform to the law. This
Right,
is,
so
everybody's griping about it because.
yeah, but I don't know why we're getting all bent out of shape about that.
Oh, it's because everybody in the state
Yeah.
is been out of shape because we get laws and here are the towns that have to implement the laws and we're
All
saying,
right,
well, did you think
we
about
don't have
this?
to be
and did-"
like
Yeah.
everybody else. It's tiresome. Let's move on. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so with
I
that,
second that motion.
all right, so with that, we'll leave this item open. Hold on a second, let me just check. Does anybody wish to comment on our proposed EV regulations before we move on? No comments on the EV regulations. Mr.
Shocked.
Basili, we're leaving this item open and the public hearing is over.
Nope.
Mr. Basili, do not get used to this. It's only 5:54.
Well, I thought this was the new regime, having
No.
showed up.
As
Don't
always,
get used to it.
the beatings
soon-
will continue until morale.
The beatings
improves.
will continue. Thank you, Mr. Basili, for joining us.
You're welcome. Have a nice night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so with that, we turn to our discussion items. Our first discussion item is 24 Homestead Lane. Mr. McRae.
Yeah, I'll see you. I'm
Okay,
recused.
Mr.
Thank you.
McRae is recusing from this application. He has a previous business relationship with the applicant. This is for a pre-application discussion at 24 Homestead Lane. This is a two-family home on a 5,000 square foot, 5,057 square foot parcel of land. It is before the commission because any two-family home in the R6, which is 7,500 square feet, must be fully reviewed by the commission. Mr. O'Donnell, to save your time, what you seem to have done with this site plan is you have made the changes to it that were made for the previous application pursuant to the staff comments you got. As a result, you will have a front entry two tandem aisle garage. Did I say that right? I don't know how to describe that. And you will have one more parking space. Behind the building, you will have two patios, but otherwise you will have green space. I believe you may have to have some vehicles backing into the street, but since Homestead Lane is not a street that prohibits not a category of street that prohibits backing in, you should be okay there. I believe that you have to comply with the new landscape regulations on this application. Your landscaping looks kind of skimpy right now. And I believe that there's really no other salient issue at this time for the commission. Commissioners, did you have any salient issues on Homestead Lane? Anybody? Okay, the thing that we talked about the most when we did a previous application on Homestead Lane was that DPW didn't want walls on the garage or doors on the garage. And they wanted slats because of it being in a flood zone. And those have been removed with this application. It is coming in this way. So that was the biggest issue we had that we went back and forth on. The second thing that we went back and forth on was this accommodation, how the parking worked, because the tandem seems awkward. But as everyone said yesterday, the cars are off the street and there's space to accommodate them on site and they can be maneuvered. So I believe we don't have anything else salient on this. Ken, again, asking.
The only question I had.
Yes, ma'am.
It said something in the application about the highway department has to issue a permit for the new driveway.
Yes.
Is that kind of standard? And I'm just
Because they're
asking.
changing the curb cut.
Okay.
Mr. O'Donnell, you might as well earn your penny and say the same thing.
Madam Chair, it's incredibly efficient. We're grateful for the consistency and the efficiency. So thank you. I'm going to ask for a little input on landscaping when it's appropriate.
Well, the closer you can, the beefier you can get it and the more in line you can get it to what we're looking for now, it would be great. Somebody's got noise on in there. Okay. So the more you can get it to where the new regs are, we know you're very tight for space. So,
my specific concern, and I'm coming here for input, but my specific concern is we did a great job saving some trees next door.
Right.
And then our other neighbor to the other side. So the same developer owns the property at 26 as 24.
Yep,
and then to the left is another property. So on either of those properties, there's beautiful 36 plus inch deciduous trees with lovely canopies. Now, when I was kind of hunting around the backyard, it was hard for me to understand how I could really get a good planting in there. And I'm wondering if the commission would consider approving a planting plan that says, subject to an arborist opinion, if any of these other trees fail, we're going to infill plant. But right now, we think the best thing is to have lower lying kind of plants that could be replaced with infill if either the neighbor, who as of right could take their trees down, and then there's a couple of trees that are actually lovely, a little bit smaller, 12 to 18, that are on the office parking lot property. So again, just if the commission would consider with a landscape architect and an arborist to say, can we have a contingent plan?
What we've done before is that the applicant shall evaluate, have an arborist evaluate whether these trees can be saved. If the trees can be saved, they shall be given adequate protection during construction. And if not, the applicant shall have the following planting plan to offset the loss of these trees.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Again, thank you for making this.
Anybody else on that? Any other tree people want to? I know Peter Levy's nodding. Okay, yeah, we'll give you first and foremost, we'd like to save the big old trees because they're the best for drainage, and we'd like to save them. To the extent though that it's not possible, then we would want you to try and replace them.
We can do both. We can give you good pollinator, good plantings right now as under kind of the canopy, and then and accept the requirement that's revisited if we lose these larger canopy trees.
You're also one of the first people to implement the new landscape regulations. So as you go through them, give us feedback.
Absolutely.
Because we've not trialed them yet, and you can write a regulation and not know what you've missed.
I agree.
So if you find something in the implementation, we had a lot of people working on them for almost 2 years, but you never know.
Absolutely.
So if you could give us feedback. Okay, hold on a second. Do I have anybody from the public who wishes to comment on 24 Homestead Lane for a 2-family home in the R6? Please raise your virtual hand. Okie dokie. All right, you're good. You can go home.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Sue. We'll see you when you come back.
Teresa. Absolutely.
Bye-bye. All right. And now we turn to can we get Nick back? Nick, if you can hear me, come back. All right. Patrick, while we're waiting, there's Nick. Patrick, while we're waiting for Nick to come back, we now have 50 people in the audience. And I expect that most of these people are here to for this application. So we would definitely want to have a timer. I think 3 minutes would be appropriate. I know we have a couple of elected public officials, at least one, and we would give that person more time. So this application is for a discussion item, pre-application review, 51 Deerfield, 51 to 69 and 69 Deerfield Avenue in the R12 to build an 830G application, 830G set aside. And Mr. Tessie.
Good evening. Or good afternoon. No, good evening, 2 minutes after 6. Madam Chairman and members of the commission, as described by the chair. My name is John Tessie for the record, representing the owners of the property located at both 51 and 69 Deerfield Drive. I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with that particular area and that property, as it's on a prominent road, Deerfield Drive, leading from the Post Road to Lake Avenue Circle. Our clients have owned this property for a substantial amount of time, 10 years, actually, I think 15 years, essentially trying to decide how to best develop it. What ultimately was concluded last year was that a multifamily building on the site, on the specifically southern portion of the property, would make the most sense from a construction standpoint, but more important from an environmental standpoint and drainage standpoint. This project allows for over 40% of the property to remain natural or enhanced when it comes to a portion of the property on the northeast corner that is a technical wetlands by soil type, but has not been maintaining any wetland features whatsoever. The enhancement plan certainly will be robust in that area. Given the fact that we do have wetlands on the property, an inland wetland and watercourses agency permit is required. In that regard, we've hired as a consultant William Kenny, who's actually here this evening. Should you have any questions of him. Also, our project engineer, Tony DeAndrea, architect, Richard Granoff, and our traffic consultant, as well as Kevin Molnar, basically the project administrator for our clients.
I think Mr. Tessie, just so you know, we probably will not call on all those people. In our discussions yesterday, we raised, as we like to do with the pre-app, we raised 3-4 significant issues that we would like to discuss with you, and we will leave it at that and get into more detail when you submit your application. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, in that regard, that's exactly why we've asked them to attend. In fact, you have to have any particular question or two. We obviously know that this project has garnered a lot of public interest, public concern, as they expressed. We anticipated that there would not be a full embracing by the public given the size of the project, but we certainly believe that its location is ideal, not only from an internal standpoint, but also from a residential standpoint when it comes to the occupants in the future, given its proximate location to so many aspects of the central Greenwich area, as I described in my cover letter to the commission. Insofar as the traffic issue is concerned, as I noted, we've hired a traffic consultant. Preliminary reviews have come in. We're going to be studying nearby intersections for the usual protocol from your engineering division. I don't think I have to get into too many details at this time, but based upon the statistical numbers provided in terms of peak hour traffic in, traffic out. We're confident that this project will fit in smartly without any material adverse effect on the traffic flow. People are going to disagree, but we're going to go by the numbers. I mentioned wetlands from an engineer. I will mention now engineering. From an engineering standpoint, Mr. DeAndrea has been working closely with the engineering division already. We've had meetings, we've had consultations. There is a game plan that seems to be a cohesive game plan and an overall consensus about how to handle and improve the stormwater emanating from this property, both in terms of quality and quantity. That plan is being developed and is part of a submission to the commission for approvals of the overall project. As you described earlier, we will be submitting the normal supporting documentation in terms of professional work product. You all know it. This is a 105 unit, 5-story project. We're going to have 32 set aside units, affordable units, half of which would meet the 60% SMI requirement under 830G, and the other half meeting the 80% SMI state median income requirement under 830G. I would have a lot more to say, but I know you have a large list that's you just heard. People asking, people assume many want to speak. I'm happy now really to respond to specific questions any of you may have.
We raised in the meeting yesterday, we raised several issues. First and foremost, as you touched on as you began, the question of wetlands and how the building addresses wetlands. We noted that you are proposing to line the building down the right-hand side, the southern side of the property, that it doesn't encroach into the 100-foot setback and the 100-foot review area for wetlands. However, it is an intense development, which nevertheless could give rise to a wetlands concern. So we would expect that before you come back to the commission, you would go to the wetlands agency.
Yes, I didn't make that clear previously.
Yes.
I'll make it clearer now. Yes.
Yeah, just making it super clear that we would want you to go there. The second issue that we were very concerned about is over and over and over again, we know that there's an issue with the infiltration on the Horseneck sewer line, and that we would want you again to fully explore this issue with Mr. Feminella of the sewer department before you do any work whatsoever and before you've invested it all in it. The third issue was that sadly, Mr. Tessie, some of us were on the commission when we approved the Chase Bank at that corner. And Mr. Levy pointed out yesterday that he did not rest until a left turn, a northbound turn onto Deerfield was prohibited coming out of that Chase driveway because it's blind there. You can't see up. And I remember Mr. Levy standing there and looking at it. And I've looked at it since then and said that was a good thing we did. It's inconvenient for people because you got to go all the way around if you want to go north. It's inconvenient, but it's a problem. So I hope you address that. You'll also see in the public comment we received, there's a lot of questions about time of day where it really gets very bad, the traffic. One of the issues that was raised for us in this traffic consideration was you've got an approach to Greenwich Hospital there. Do you have an impact on emergency vehicles? Do you have any kind of life threat situation with emergency vehicles, bearing in mind that ambulances are trying to get back up from 95, from an accident on 95 up to the hospital, etc. So if you would look not at the intersections, I think Mary pointed out yesterday that your level of service at that intersection at certain times is a D. And what happens with that when people need to get through it? the last issue we raised was one of the impact that you have on the property to the south, which is 45 Deerfield, because you're very close to it, and they will then be sandwiched between a large parking lot for the library and your development to the north. Our new landscape regulations would not apply to you necessarily because you're an 830G application, but their intent is to shield residential uses from single-family residential, from multifamily, commercial, institutional uses, and that you would consider that as you develop landscaping. Those are the concerns. Did I miss anything, you guys?
What about flooding?
Flooding, great point. Go ahead. Somebody mentioned the flooding after Ida. I had forgotten all about that because it came up at the end.
Talking
Another
about
huge
flooding
concern.
through, you're talking about Horseneck Brook?
We're
Yes.
talking about how that whole area encountered flooding. Have you considered that? What's the impact?
Well, we're
Because-
on this, well, property's
Go
on
ahead.
somewhat of a
So-
slope. But the bottom line is, as I said earlier, we're working closely with the engineering division, and we'll continue to work closely with the engineering division.
And we're
as we
hoping
work
that
through our final plans.
you saw FEMA is supposed to, according to DPW, FEMA's issuing the new maps,
Mhm.
that you will be able to consider the new maps. Okay, did I leave anything out then?
No, you got flooding. I just want to clarify there. We're particularly interested in where the tipping point is. We've seen your engineers' analyses before, and they basically will show improvements up to a certain, let's say, ferocity of storm. And then because you'll be adding additional impervious structure, the improvements will be overwhelmed, or the rain gardens will get filled up, the swells will get filled up. And then at that point, I think the amount of water coming up off the property will be greater than what it was before. So we're very interested in where the tipping point is. Is it a 5-year storm? Is it a 10-year storm or a 100-year storm? Number one. And number two, have you heard anything from FEMA in terms of new definitions of a 5 or 25-year storm? We're getting anecdotally a 50-year storm is now a 25-year storm, and so on. So very interested in the tipping point and where you're sees it.
And having said that, Mr. Tessie,
Yes,
there's one other thing, which
and
before-
Mr. DeAndrea, go ahead.
Yeah, so one other thing. It's not clear to me that this rises to something that we might consider in the way 830G is written, but we're going to look into it. These buildings, the existing structures apparently have landmark status. We heard from the Preservation Trust. I'm sure you saw that today. We heard from the Preservation Trust, and it is disappointing for the community that we are not able to save landmark buildings of this beauty. So one of the questions is there anything you could do to save these buildings? Could they be relocated in some sort of cost-effective way? Could they be reused in your plan in some sort of way? Is there a manner to saving these buildings? Recognizing that under 830G, this is probably not, it's not at this point clear to me where it falls under the issues that come before us.
Yeah.
Mary, you wanted to say something?
No, that was the point I was going to raise, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Well-
Thank you
well,
very much.
Yeah,
Madam
just to
Chair?
respond, I can tell you.
Mr. Tessie,
Oh, go
before we
ahead,
move
Mr.
on,
Macri.
I think taking up where Madam Chair left off, you had stated that the development that we're seeing in front of us tonight was the best solution, speaking in terms of your environmental impediments, preserving the natural features, that kind of thing. But I would like to, if you return, have some kind of a discussion and a narrative to the effect of why you couldn't, as Madam Chair suggested, save the buildings or done something more of a cluster development at residential scale. Something that was actually more akin to what the neighborhood is like, as opposed to a 452 by 65 6-story building. I think actually we have an opportunity here of a wonderful piece of property that's got great natural features, as you indicated, that now maybe compromised by an intrusion where maybe there's an alternate plan, saving a lot of the existing architecture and really working with the natural wetlands and the impediments to really work a wonderful residential neighborhood into this, almost a neighborhood unto its own self.
On that account, I would just add that I think that the verbiage that you put forth, that this is somehow the best of all possible worlds, is not too believable. And we really would like you to be more, take much more consideration into what we're saying. I think that there's no question that these buildings could be saved. There's no question that this is not the best design. There is no question that there are many alternatives that would much better suit the neighborhood and the town. So please don't come back and say this is the best we can do.
Well, let me clarify what
now
I did
you
say.
can talk.
Thank you. It's okay. It's okay. We did look at many alternatives. I didn't suggest that this was the best we can do in the sense that it's a matter of making the whole world happy. It was the best we could do given the parameters after 10 of the clients, given 15 years of studying. I'll let the architect, Mr. Granoff, and Mr. Granoff and or Mr. Molnar, but I know we're not going to do it today, discuss the issues of preserving those buildings. There are site issues, but I'm happy that you wrote all of these items out. They're all logical. I get community concern. There is maybe there's a vehicle to modify the plan somewhat significantly. And that would be, and I'm putting it on the table as a discussion item, to work with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in playing a role as it's been doing in some projects. And that could afford some ability as we balance out costs here. And that's a factor, as everybody knows, what it costs to construct. And when you're talking about, call it spade a spade, because it's all about the money. We're talking about the cost of building those affordable units, at 32% of them being that way, plus the cost of building the project. You wind up with larger projects. One of the beauties of perhaps working with the trust fund is to have a smaller meaningfully smaller project and have more of a compromise, perhaps. If you all think that's a worthy goal, and obviously it's our choice, but certainly if we hear from you, it gives us a bit more confidence in moving forward with that trust fund. Not that there's any reason at all to suggest that it means we're going to obtain an approval at the end of the day from you, but it is an alternative for us, taking into account your comments, to perhaps come up with a meaningfully smaller project. Whether we can save one or two of those buildings as a result of that, I don't know, but we're certainly going to explore it.
I think the first question before we could weigh in on the trust would be where you are with wetlands and with the environmental issues.
Well, it's important for us.
It may be what is unknown to us right now is what magnitude of development could even be considered here. And that's what we'd love you to have an answer on. We're
going forward with wetlands, as I had stated. I just wanted to point out we're amenable to working with the trust fund.
Yeah.
If you don't want to weigh in on it, certainly that's your prerogative.
No, it's great. It's great
definitive.
if you want to work with the trust fund. We welcome that. But it's just, unless you've already had the conversations with wetlands, that seems like an essential issue to address, because you could negotiate with the trust fund and then you could get to wetlands, and wetlands would still perhaps not buy into your program. So in terms of which duck you get into a row first, I would say first and foremost would be wetlands.
Well,
and second would be sewer.
Good. Well, SOAR, we will obviously have Mr. DeAndrea deal with the SOAR department, Mr. Feminella and his fine team. And so far as wetlands concerned, obviously the goal is to preserve the wetland, protect the wetland, not materially adversely affect the wetlands. We think our team will demonstrate that, as a matter of law anyway, conclusively to the Wetlands Agency. But this is a process. This is the beginning of the process with you and everyone else. Some aspects such as engineering and traffic, we started early to get some confidence going forward. So we hope to see you again.
Now, that said,
stay in good health.
we've given you all the negatives. Don't go away yet, because we're
I'm
gonna
not
get
going
the-
anywhere. I know we have
Okay.
a number of people.
So
and
that's, yeah, because they'll mention things that we may not have considered. That said,
Yeah.
your letter makes a very good point that this is a location to which downtown and transit are reachable and walkable. And that from that point of view, could be very attractive. It is central to town, well located in terms of amenities, and that is worth bearing in mind. That was a plus that is definitely belongs to this application. But again, there's some major issues to be addressed. Anybody else on the commission want to throw something in on that?
I would like to just throw one other thing in.
Yes, sir.
Very quickly, but you're probably going to hear from it based upon what I've read from public comments about an old deed restriction on the properties. Those deed restrictions were judicially removed in the year 2021. I've sent Mr. Leroux, I don't know if he had time to share it with you all, the copy of the affidavit in order that's on file in the Greenwich Freedom Land Records. So the property is not burdened with any restrictive covenants dealing with the number of homes or subdivisions on these properties. People were looking at old documents, old deeds, making these comments, but the title is free and clear. So,
okay. Mr. Leroux didn't get a chance to share that with us. We will share it with council, and as you know, we normally don't get into those areas. So
right.
but
I'm
we
only
will share
bringing
with
it up
council.
because I believe it will be brought up. That's all.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
So that being all, commissioners and applicant, no other comments? I mean, Bob, I spoke for you. I know you welcome all comers to the trust.
Oh, yeah,
but
and Mr. Tessie and I have had several conversations about other projects. As you know, we've not spoken about this one at all, but he knows that the trust is eager to help anybody with such an application consider a dramatically smaller one, and he knows how we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
All righty. Okay, so we'll turn to public comment. I'm going to go first. I assume that Mario Coppola is representing the neighbors, or group of neighbors. And then I remember seeing we have an elected official here, so I will go to them after that. All right, there we go. All right. So Mr. Coppola, followed by Hector Arzino. And Rachel Kana. I think those are the ones I saw. Mr. Coppola.
Evening, Madam Chairwoman, Commission members. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I do represent a group of neighbors who are opposed to the overdevelopment of the subject properties. As you know, or as you may know, there was a proposed development for this property around 10 years ago for 14 units. And that was ultimately rejected and not feasible. And unfortunately, this seems to be a circumstance where a developer has then come in with the 8-30G hammer, proposing a project which is really unrealistic and quite frankly irresponsible, with the hope that folks would think that there's some compromise down the road when there's a potentially
more realistic development. That's still probably a significant overdevelopment that creates significant issues for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And that's unfortunately, it's disappointing, but it's I guess what we're used to a lot of times with these type of applications. And granted, we do understand and respect that this is just a pre-application. Counsel for the applicant had mentioned different options for addressing some of the concerns raised by the commission, and we would hope that in trying to come up with, trying to understand, for the applicant to try to understand, or in an effort for the applicant to try to understand opportunities to address concerns that have been raised by the commission, and hopefully to also address concerns that will get raised this evening by members of the public, that the applicant makes a good faith effort to reach out to the neighbors, to engage the neighbors in the process, to understand what the neighbors' concerns are about a development for this property, and to take that into consideration, and to truly give due consideration to those comments and thoughts. And we welcome that opportunity. By the way, before I go any further in my comments, I see that there's a timer up. I recognize that generally there's a 3-minute timer.
But not for council. Not
for council, I'll have the opportunity to go a little longer.
You are correct. Not for council.
And I will try to keep my remarks brief. I do understand that there's a dinner break.
I
coming
know
up
they
at
don't
some
teach you
point.
guys that in law school, but not for council. Yes, you're right. You can exceed your 3 minutes.
Again, we hope there's an opportunity to be engaged in the process by the developer. There's some major issues here that I just want to bring your attention. As you know, we submitted a letter into the record yesterday, which provides more detail to our initial concerns. We obviously reserve the right to, at a later date, based on additional filings from the applicant, to provide additional comments, and eventually to provide the expert testimony if necessary. Obviously, this is an incomplete application which lacks critical input from other agencies, such as your Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency and Sewer Division. I agree with the chairwoman that this application should go before the Inland Wetlands Commission. I understand that it's been proposed at this point to be beyond the 100-foot distance from the wetland, but we feel strongly as well that this is within the jurisdiction of the Inland Wetlands Commission and should be reviewed by it. With regard to the sanitary sewers, we have legitimate concerns regarding the capacity of the town system to safely accommodate a development anywhere near this size and density. Just to give some perspective, back in 2010, for a prior proposal regarding this property for just 14 units, the DPW expressed significant concern at that time regarding that application. Now here you have a proposal before you that would require the same system, which has further problems from 2010 flash forward to 2023, to accommodate a development that's 15 times larger than the 14 units proposed back in 2010, and is an incredible 52.5 times larger than the existing development on site. There's no question that the commission may reject an affordable housing application if the development proposed will have inadequate sewer facilities to serve the development. The Connecticut courts have confirmed that, and there's references in our letter as to the judicial authority for that holding. With regard to traffic and safety, I do think that's an area where it is important for the commission and also the developer to hear what those who live in the neighborhood have to say, because they literally deal with the traffic every single day there. And I think what you're going to hear is that members of the public will attest to the fact that Deerfield Drive and US Route 1, Lakeview Avenue, and Lafayette Place are already congested and accident-prone thoroughfares, and will be rendered to be further unsafe by a development anywhere near the magnitude of what's been proposed so far in this pre-application. I was surprised to hear from our clients that there's been approximately 70 accidents on Deerfield Drive in recent years. And what's really troubling, when I initially drove around the site with one of the clients, was, you know, the close proximity to the hospital. And the first thing that popped into my head, first question I asked is, you know, if you have a major traffic issue that gets caused by this development at various times when traffic is high in that area, that's going to create a real safety issue for access to the hospital. And you know, I think other professionals will confirm that. Certainly, folks who know a lot more than I do about traffic patterns and access that the hospital needs, or vehicular access that the hospital needs. But just common sense, it's certainly an issue that I think is raised for anybody on an initial just walkthrough of the area. With regard to the engineering and stormwater management and inland wetlands, just a few brief comments. There's an incredible increase of impervious coverage proposed here. It'll have the amount of change of the impervious coverage. It will have an effect on the flooding in the area. You don't have to be a professional engineer to know that. It's just common sense based on what's there. And if you just walk the site, the topography and seeing what's proposed, it's a drastic change, and it's absolutely going to have a major impact on flooding. Again, other professionals, I'm sure, will attest to that later in this proceeding. I just point out also that the significant increase proposed by the applicants in the impervious coverage also conflicts with the stated goals of your plan of conservation and development to limit impervious lot coverage on new residential construction. We're certainly concerned about the possibility that the low impact design features proposed by the applicant's engineer just won't function as intended. And then it's just going to be a disaster. The fact that the subject property, which isn't really that big, contains almost 12,000 square feet of inland wetlands, further, supports our concern that the site is just not suitable for a development of anywhere near this size from the standpoint of water control. The proposed development will impair the value and quality of that wetland through the deposition of sediment, turbid runoff, automobile emissions, debris, pesticides, and other non-point source pollutants. Furthermore, the applicant's proposal to significantly increase the impervious lot coverage, coupled with the impairment of the on-site wetland that's there, and its ability to absorb and detain the runoff, will exacerbate existing down gradient flooding in the area associated with the Horseneck Brook and Horseneck Creek. Right now, the down gradient flooding and other members of the public, neighbors there could attest to this, under existing conditions, contributes to traffic congestion and impedes the safe travel of motorists and emergency vehicles in the area, especially with storm events. With a development anywhere near the size of what's being proposed, that's going to be significantly exacerbated, and it's going to create a real safety issue. I'm confident that that professionals, that appropriate professionals, further during the proceedings related to this application, will attest to that. At this time, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to just give you some of our initial concerns about the project, and I really do hope that developer makes a concerted effort to work with the neighbors to come up with a more appropriate development for this property in the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coppola. With that, we're going to turn to the two elected officials I'm seeing in the audience. And again, we will let them speak. We're hoping that they keep it brief. The first one is Rachel Khanna. Hold on, ma'am, I'm coming. And then the second one will be Hector Arseno. Okay, ma'am, if you would go ahead, Madam
Good
Representative.
evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As many of you know, while 830G was intended to promote the availability of affordable housing, laws such as 830G put our community at the mercy of developers who will build as large as is profitable without having to account for whether the surrounding community can handle such density in its schools, roads, water supplies, and sewers. I'm a strong believer that our local municipalities should be making decisions about local solutions to our housing needs. The best way to meet our local housing needs while protecting ourselves from 830G backed development is to build more affordable housing on our own terms. This project is concerning on many levels, but specifically the protection of our wetlands. I don't think the setbacks are far enough of the proposed project. Also, as was mentioned before, Deerfield Drive is a major thoroughfare for emergency vehicles, and traffic congestion could delay and imperil patient care. And finally, flooding is an ever-growing problem in our town, as we have seen in areas like Pembroke and around Brooks Brothers in central Greenwich, and we can't keep developing properties that put neighborhoods at an increased risk of flooding. I support the many residents who are rightfully angry about the ability of developers to bypass local zoning processes, and hope that this application serves as a wake-up call to the town to develop a plan to meet our affordable housing targets so that we can be protected from 830G backed development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Arceno, if you would go ahead. And then we'll turn to the full public. Everybody in the public who wishes to speak, please kindly raise your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair and commissioners. Thank you very much for your service. I am Hector Arceno, currently serving Greenwich in the State House for the 151st District. And I am here today raising to speak against item 6B in today's agenda, 51 Deerfield LLC and others. I oppose oversight developments that are directly impacting our community. I believe, and let the experts elaborate, as you very well mentioned before, that a due planning process that includes health issues, sewer, safety, traffic and flooding, and environmental issues, wetlands, is very much due in this project. These type of proposals under 830G are taking advantage to circumvent local zoning regulations. And I am on public record in different forums and on the RTM, where I spoke of possible solution to tackle our shortage of affordable housing in our town. Certainly, overdevelopments are not one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arceno. Okay, folks, with that, we're going to go to the public. Everybody's timed to 3 minutes. The first speaker is Anthony Moore. Anthony Moore will be followed by John Porter. And after that is Diane Fox. Mr. Moore has disappeared. Is he in Never Never Land? Okay, Mr. Porter, we're going to go with you. I don't know what happened, Mr. Moore. All right, if you would unmute, Mr. Porter, you'll be all ready to go. And then Diane Fox will be next. Hello, Mr. Porter.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Well,
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak on this issue. I also want to thank the community who have been extremely vocal in their concerns about this project, submitting over 50 pages of public commentary for the record. In addition, our elected representatives, we really support your making this sustainable affording housing a key issue of your platforms. And to be clear, we want to say that we are not against affordable housing opportunities in this town. And while we stand here, we are against the exploitation by serial developers who are wielding 830G to push these grossly oversized and underdeliver affordable housing, which fail to protect the basic public health and safety of our community. We are open to hearing a reasonable proposal from the developer, who has yet, to my knowledge, reached out to a single person in the community or the Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust. Instead, their first communication is through this 830G proposal, and this is the message. This is not reasonable. I will let our public statement stand as the residence is 45 Deerfield Drive, and I will not go through all the valid points that have been brought up by our fellow neighbors, but I will highlight what I see as the insurmountable issues impacting both public safety and health. The first is the wetlands and flooding. A proposed development in 2010 was denied based on wetlands. The last survey that was taken here was back in 2008. It is clear to anyone that a 150,000 square foot building, despite being on the edge of this 100-foot setback, will degrade the wetland, as well as increase flooding in the area. Just digging a larger hole will not fix this issue. Second, on safety, Deerfield Drive is a crucial artery connecting our town and is directly linked to our Greenwich Hospital emergency access. There have been over 70 accidents on Deerfield Drive in the last 6 years. I'd like to thank my mother for getting a Freedom of Information Act on that with the Greenwich PD. So, and a lot of these accidents involve pedestrians and also stopping for emergency vehicles. There might not be a more crucial third of a mile stretch. This road is only a third of a mile in all of Greenwich. So this project could negatively impact not just residents and pedestrians on this road, but also our emergency responders. If you go through all the points that the commission has made and what the residents and community members are going to say on this call, there's size, there's wetlands, there's sewer, there's safety and flooding. This proposal, as it stands, is a bridge way too far. And make no mistake, this proposal is not about affordable housing. What we gain in terms of a small amount of temporary affordable housing in a 70% unaffordable luxury development does not outweigh the health and safety concerns brought by this proposal. We need a long-term solution, and we urge our elected officials to act on fixing 830G and create more town-controlled affordable housing developments through Greenwich communities. If we do not act, these proposals will continue to be as presented. We thank you all for your time and consideration tonight. We realize the great service that your commission undertakes for the benefit of the health and safety of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Porter. Just so you know, we do have our state senator did submit a bill to amend 830G. I don't know if it's progressed. Mr. Moore, if you would go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Anthony Moore. I represent this district in the representative town meeting, along with several other folks on Deerfield Lane, which is immediately below Deerfield Drive on the other side of Deerfield Drive. I was one of the authors of the sense of the meeting resolution last year that the RTM passed, and specifically wrote in the section that urged the town leadership to increase its efforts to develop and plan for our affordable housing needs. So I welcome dense, multifamily, affordable housing, and I welcome that in this neighborhood and on that property. Moreover, we moved to this neighborhood specifically because it's downtown, it's walkable to the railroad station, it has all the amenities of such a location. My wife and I love the mix of business, family, multifamily housing, retail, hustle bustle, the hospital, single family residential. And we believe that the properties that are under question are inevitably going to be used for denser development than currently exists just because of where we are, affordable or no. This is not the Greenwich downtown of 1923. But my home is arguably directly at the bottom of the gully below this development and in a perfect position to receive all the water that it may shed. In fact, we already are. When my house was built prior to our coming to this neighborhood, an extensive retention system was built under the front lawn to slow the impacts of stormwater runoff. It's still flooded in this basement that I sit in today, up to, I understand, as many as 4 feet. On September 2nd, 2021, we had extensive flooding in our neighborhood, a river of water coming down from the hillside above us. At least 2 of our neighbors' houses flooded. We had flooding in our lane. In fact, the Deerfield Drive had flooding and had to be shut down because a pipe that went from the north side of Deerfield Drive underneath the drive was undermined by all the water coming into it. Undoubtedly, there is a different multifamily, transit-oriented, affordable or not alternative that fits in with the limited capacity of our topography for absorbing the impacts, not just of extreme weather, but just the regular rainy weather that we expect to get for a long time to come. Thanks for your time and appreciate your attention. We want the health and the safety of our neighborhood to be considered, not just a 830G. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Our next speaker is Diane Fox. She will be followed by Veronique Magnan, followed by Kim Fiorello. Ms. Fox, if you would go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm speaking on behalf of the Preservation Network of the Historic Society. And obviously, you've read our letter because a couple of the points were made by Mr. Tessie as well as yourself. I point out that this is a landmark building. We're talking about 69 Deerfield. It's 122 years old, and it is a landmark. And the write-up, I believe you've already seen, extensive, the architectural features, and also the site features. And one of the key things was, of course, the deed restriction. Mr. Tessie says that that no longer exists. We would like to take a look at that too, not from a legal standpoint, but the question that arises is that perhaps these other properties on Deerfield Drive may also have restrictions. If not, you're looking at Deerfield Drive in the future that could have big and massive developments similar to what we're looking at. And that's a very unique location for some of the lovely architectural and historic buildings. I would point out a couple of things. Under the section of state statutes 8-2A, zoning regulations may be made with reasonable consideration for the protection of historic factors. And we feel that this site, both sites actually, fall under that, and the Commission should be considering that as well. So there's state statutes that allow it. Under the 8-30G, and we've raised this point before, the statute does not directly address the issue of historic properties. However, it says it empowers the zoning commissions to use their decisions to protect substantial public interests in health, safety, or other matters which the commission may legally consider. We feel historic factors are part of that. And it is something that's very important to the town. As you noted, in the 2019 POCD, it says Greenwich residents take pride in our diverse culture, 380-year history, community amenities, and natural beauty. We prize our important architectural landmarks and the character of our individual neighborhoods and wish to retain a sense of place for our unique assets which provide. Greenwich is well known for its outstanding architecture and rich history. It's imperative to retain. That's a direct quote from the Plan of Conservation and Development. So we do read the plan, just so that you're aware.
Thank you.
The other thing too, of course, is the 2007 application that went to wetlands for the 14 units. Wetlands did have a problem with it, but when looking at the development, if there's a way to, as you pointed out, Madam Chair, to redevelop the site in a more conducive manner, multifamily, the 14 units certainly look a lot better than the 105, and also protected some of the unique features of the site. I mean, I think the idea of having cluster development certainly would be an opportunity, but I'm not here to speak to that issue. We are looking at it from a historic preservation standpoint of a building that's 122 years old. And if this goes, how many more will go? So we are concerned. We understand.
Time, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fox. Our next speaker is Veronique Magnan, and after that, Kimberly Fiorello, followed by Valerie Stauffer. Ma'am, if you could go ahead.
Hi. So I live at 8 Deerfield Drive, and in terms of safety on Deerfield Drive, it's already a big concern. First week of school this year, the bus stop was at Deerfield Grove Lane and Deerfield Drive, and then first week, there was already an accident. A car rear-ended another one while the kids were coming off of the bus. So we had the bus stop changed. Also, to come out of my driveway, a lot of time I need to wait for several minutes. The traffic is backed up all the way after Grove Lane, a bit before the circle on Lake Avenue, but it's definitely already an issue. And we have a lot of young kids around now. So to say that the traffic can take it and all, I think we need measures definitely, even without building anything on the drive already. So I'm very concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Magnan. Next speaker is Kim Fiorello, followed by Valerie Stauffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, commissioners and town planner. Very nice to see you tonight. I'm Kimberly Fiorello. I speak as a resident in this neighborhood. Some of you may know that I am the former state representative for this area, and I served on planning and development in Hartford. And I'm very well aware of the 830G law. Its good intentions 30 years ago, but also its incredibly dire unintended consequences in neighborhood after neighborhood across our state. I'm grateful that the current state representative have come to speak, and I'm really hopeful that they will work to fix this law. But as we face this particular development, there's 2 points I wanted to make. On a personal level, living right on Grove Lane and Deerfield, it's not infrequent that I hear tires screeching, and sometimes we go to the window to see if everything is okay. But on the morning of May 11th, 2021, it was my own daughter coming back from a piano lesson just about a mile away that was in a car accident. It's always turning from Grove onto Deerfield, not realizing that the cars are traveling very fast and one or the other car not stopping in time. The car that my daughter was in was deemed unusable. That car is totaled. Thankfully, my daughter was fine. But the risks of turning onto Deerfield, the sight lines on this road are very dangerous. And I think that there should be great care to increasing the traffic on Deerfield Drive. Also, as a member of the Collections Committee at Greenwich Historical Society, we spend a tremendous amount of time preserving the history of our 380-year-old town. I wonder if the P&Z might begin to consider the preservation of historic buildings in the public interest as reaching a level of urgency for our town. You have within 830G the parameter to consider public health, public safety, and other matters. And I wonder if now, as we see more demolition, and particularly 830Gs being a threat to historic buildings like we saw in over on the properties off of Greenwich Avenue and over by the hospital in the 4th Ward. Consistently, these projects are coming in to demolish buildings that are irreplaceable. And I often liken the feeling I have when I think about these buildings being gone, because we've experienced this now, many places where the buildings are gone. That I took care of my grandmother to her last moments. And when my grandmother was gone, she was gone. And I feel that way about these buildings that are being taken down. Thank you very much.
So just quickly, I'm going to answer you, Ms. Fiorello, because you asked if the commission would consider. You remember we had the application on Sherwood. And in regard to that, it is a historic district. And the buildings on the avenue also fell under that consideration under the Connecticut Environmental Protection Act. Since it's a state law, 830G doesn't override it. We do have zoning regulations in place to protect historic buildings, to encourage people to save them, and we give people incentives, zoning incentives to save buildings. If someone had made this a historic district, and if somebody, and I'm asking anybody who's listening, if you want to see neighborhoods be saved, we have regulations where you can do historic overlays and you can protect buildings. But the public also has to have a willingness. We have the regulations in place. Then the public also has to be willing to restrict those buildings from development. But in other cases where we know that a building has landmark status, there is no zoning that isn't overridden by 830G. And that's the bind that I was struggling with. And that I don't know an answer to. I 100% agree with you. I would love to see the applicant save these buildings and possibly work with them, but that would be a question up to them. But thank you, because you gave me this opportunity to climb up on our soapboxes, on the soapbox the whole commission has, that people can do more in town as well. We have the regulation. We need more people to take advantage of it. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I will certainly follow up with you on that too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Valerie Stauffer. She's from the RTM. I'm sure she's here as a private person, followed by Christina Porter. who I believe is from 45 Deerfield. And then someone who's called Zoom user. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Stauffer, if you would unmute first. And Patrick, yeah. There you go. You're all set.
So I'm Valerie Stauffer. Do not live in the immediate neighborhood, but I'm here as a citizen wanting to preserve the neighborhoods. I was chair of District 7 for a number of years, still serve on the RTM, and we're concerned with all developments in District 7. By the way, thank you all for all what you do on P&Z. My husband served on it. It's tremendous amount of work, great service to our town. I can't believe that this project would pass wetlands and the sewer problems, but I'm just going to speak as a citizen who drives down from Pexland Road every day. The traffic is considerable. I can't imagine a project with 50 or so cars going out. You can say people will walk from there, but you know, these days people drive. And the library, that turn, they're required to turn left. Now, I'm not sure how you'd handle in this project, whether everyone would just turn left or you're going to have them going in all directions. So I think on the grounds of safety and traffic, plus the other issues that you've all brought up. But thank you for letting me give my input.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for your service on the RTM. Our next speaker is Christina Porter, followed by Zoom user, who will be asked to say who you are.
Hello, my name is Christina Porter. Quick thank you to the Commission for your work, time, and efforts. For those of the attendees that haven't made it through all the public comments, I am a lead advanced professional known as a lead AP with specialty in building design and construction and a deeper background in sustainability and design. I'd just like to highlight from my submission that there is a significant amount of water that comes through these properties during a storm. I myself found myself in a trench of the soil with a broken leg in a foot of almost frozen water. It took emergency personnel 40 minutes upon arrival to get me out. And there's a lot of water that runs through there. And the idea that the basin they are proposing will capture all of this, including the displaced water unable to drain where the impermeable structure will take place of the current vegetation, is unrealistic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Porter. Our next speaker, if you would unmute and tell us who you are, please.
Hi, my name is Lindsay McWhorter. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's saying Zoom user. I think one of my kids must have done that one. I live at 8 Grove Lane, down in the gully next to Anthony Moore, as he described. My biggest concern is that I have 3 small children, elementary school aged, and I had the disadvantage of standing at the top of Grove Lane in Deerfield for 2.5 school years, waiting for the bus, and witnessed a car accident, had a car drive up onto the curb as my children and I were standing there because they weren't paying attention. And this school year, when we had 3 additional children added to our bus route, asked the bus company to change our stop. And he told me without even coming out, he knew the stop and there was no need for him to come assess it because he knew how dangerous it was. With the development, being where it's proposed and traffic trying to turn left and head south, knowing how difficult that's going to be with the traffic as it is, they're going to turn right and cut down Grove Lane to get to Brookside, as cars often do. And my children are playing outside all the time. We're kind of the funnel for the neighborhood. The kids all love to play down at our house as well. The flooding, we have a pond in front of our home. Our home's 225 years old. We have a sewer line that runs underneath our property that's not even our own. It's one of a neighbor's. It's over 100 years old. We've been told is an issue. So between the safety and the flooding and the sewage concerns, those are our biggest issues. Thank you for my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. McWhorter. Our next speaker is Haley Hosey, followed by Martin Lebrock.
Hello, thank you
to the commission for having me on. I'm a resident at 4 Brookside Park. We're a little enclave off Brookside Drive. We're 7 houses and we have 7 children under 2. A lot of those children will walk to actually Greenwich Library. Our big concern here is really traffic, both with the construction of this type of building and also a building that has 100+ parking spaces. What we've seen from the construction that was done on the sewer lines on Brookside Drive is that traffic will normally spill over into neighboring areas, essentially making Grove Lane potentially like another thoroughfare, which we find very concerning. So thank you for hearing our concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hosey. Martin Laybrook is next, followed by Grace Crandall.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Martin Leibrock, I'm a resident at 18 Deerfield Lane. Want to just start before I talk about my concerns, just let everybody know I bring some relevant expertise on large construction projects like this with over 15 years of experience in commercial construction in New York City. One of the things that I want to point out, we've talked a lot about traffic and wetlands and stormwater runoff in the built condition, but the construction impacts are something that we haven't considered yet in this forum. One of the things specifically in construction, stormwater pollution and prevention plan is something that's required on projects of a certain scale. I don't know whether this project is subject to those requirements, but certainly a concern living downhill from the project about stormwater runoff during the construction phase. Another concern I want to express is also related to, with the traffic impacts during construction. I did a quick calculation on how many trucks would be required to actually export the fill associated with the subterranean parking garage. And I'm seeing that coming to easily 4,000 trips with a triaxle dump truck across Deerfield Drive. So that's an 80,000 pound dump truck on a street that already has traffic and safety concerns. And then lastly, the sewer, the condition of the sewer line that's being proposed to tie into. I renovated my house at 18 Deerfield last year, had the line cameraed with the town sewer inspector. I was there firsthand to see what was on the screen during the camera inspection and talk to the inspector. There were sags in the pipe where standing water accumulated. And again, being downhill from the project, I'd be concerned about all the additional input potentially causing backups into the lower lying housing systems. So thank you for your time and appreciate the consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laybrook. Grace Crandall is next, followed by Tara Restieri.
Hi, thank you for the time to hear our concerns. I'm a neighbor at 14 Deerfield Lane. Lindsay and Marty stole some of my thunder, but I will echo their concerns. In addition to the concerns that you have already discussed regarding the wetlands, flooding, sewage, and drainage, I wanted to highlight that we hadn't addressed the concern of runoff during the construction phase. I saw that there was a rain pond, which was presented but I was unsure whether that rain pond would be constructed throughout the project and how the runoff, erosion, et cetera, would be addressed throughout the construction phase. In addition, I also really want to echo the concern about the danger with the increased traffic, as well as pedestrians. There are not sidewalks all the way from Deerfield Drive to Putnam. So inevitably, pedestrians will be required to cross the road. And I'm really not sure where that's feasible. In a car, there's not appropriate sight lines as it stands today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crandall. Just to answer, just so you know, it's part of our process to get construction phasing and logistics and what will be done. And that the applicant will provide us, but we'll make sure we ask those questions. Thank you. The next speaker is Tara Restieri, followed by the last speaker, Albert Roth. If anyone else wishes to speak, please get that hand up. There is a person who lowered their hand, phone number 5417. All right, go ahead.
Hi there.
Hi, Tara.
I don't know. I can't, for some
That's
reason,
all
get
right.
my video to work. But Tara Restieri, I am a representative on the RTM in District 7. I am also on the Town Board of Human Services. I'm on the Town Affordable Housing Trust Committee, and I'm also on the board of Greenwich EMS. And I just want to say that we've heard from a lot of people that have very valid concerns. I think that the developer needs to get back to the drawing board, have conversations with the Affordable Housing Trust, have conversations also with those of us at Greenwich EMS, because I no longer am able to ride in Greenwich because I conflict of interest because I'm on the board, but that is a major thoroughfare for us in terms of getting patients to and from the hospital. And we need to consider these things very, very seriously. This is not just a rinse repeat. Oh, we're all complaining about 830Gs. There are really serious concerns that I think that we need to address. And I know you guys are going to do that. I know you care about it. I know you're going to have the right conversations, but the developers need to have the right conversations with the neighbors and with GEMS and with the Affordable Housing Trust. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Roth is next, followed by Peter Alexander. Go ahead, Mr. Roth, you just need to unmute. Good,
Hi,
perfect.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I work as a caretaker at 45 Deerfield Drive, and I have known the family for more than 30 years. And 30 years ago, it was difficult to pull out of that driveway at the bottom of Deerfield Drive, adjacent to the library. So I want to say that there is a crosswalk on Deerfield Drive, and it's about 100 feet off Lake Avenue Circle. And I invite anyone in this panel to go and try to walk across that, because the cars that come out of it coming from Glenville Road, they're not looking at the crosswalk. They have their eyes on the cars coming out of Lake Avenue or out of that circle. And so you're taking your hands into your life when you cross that walk. Secondly, I had helped the neighbor next door on the proposed property. There is a tenant there, and he created a garden, and I gave him some help there. And on that property, there were test holes that were dug. And last year was a really dry summer. I don't know if you all remember, but there was you could say that it did not rain last summer. And
for 6 weeks.
Yeah. There was the water in those test holes was only about a foot below grade. So, and that was in the middle of last summer. Lastly, I watched this meeting from 4 o'clock on, and there was concern at the beginning of this meeting at what some construction on a house on Berrying Hill Road would have, what it would look like to the property. And I've seen the plans for what these would look like, and it would destroy what the town has looked like for a long time. That, it would be a profound impact. That's it. I want to thank you all for listening, and good night.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Peter Alexander. Mr. Alexander, if you would unmute and go ahead. And again, as a reminder, 3 minutes.
How about that? Unmute.
There you go. You're all set. And
Okay.
phone number 5417, you had your hand up at one point. If you still want to raise it, please do. Go ahead, Mr. Alexander.
Yes, I would like to comment that I'm very excited about the public participation that we've been experiencing lately in town. And I think you may know of me as a former member of the Historic District Commission, including being chairman. And I was basically taken away from that. I want to make sure everyone knows I'm neither electable or appointable. And what I'm speaking to you from the position of my 40 years as a licensed landscape architect, I want to just make it on record that I really think Section 8 needs to be looked at as unconstitutional. I think 1% here and 1% there, and we have to kowtow to the whims of Hartford. I mean, just drive through Bruce Park and you'll see what our future could look like with that pedestrian bridge. I really think it's time for Greenwich to remain a town. And I think it would be, however it comes out, I mean, I'll pro say it if I have to, but I really think we should question the constitutionality of Section 8. I think we need to be more dependent on physiography, drainage, and Greenwich is pretty unusual because most of our main thoroughfares are north and south. Any increased Deerfield population would not be a good idea for any planner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. We have one more speaker. It is Travis Escobedo. Mr. Escobedo, if you would go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Commission, for letting me speak this evening.
Yes.
On Deerfield Lane, and one of the issues that we haven't heard from this evening is the issue of light pollution and the impacts on the health and safety of the community. First and foremost, light pollution is something that we don't often think about, but it does have very large effects on people, as well as the natural environment around us, all the animals that live in the area. And then secondly, I just lost my train of thought. I apologize, but
That's
anyway,
okay.
the light pollution is something that I wanted to bring up and just think about the impacts of that on the community and the natural environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Escobedo. You've hit a very good point, because in fact, wherever something is impacted by the Connecticut Environmental Protection Act, we are able to do something about an 830G. Thank you, sir.
Great.
Okay, sorry, you guys. One more speaker. It's Debbie Applebaum. And ma'am, if you would go ahead, and sorry, Tara, I forgot to remove you. All right, this is really it. I don't see any more hands. Madam Applebaum, if you would just unmute. Debbie, you're still muted. There you go.
Sorry, it
That's
didn't
okay.
pop up before. So I apologize. Thank you for the time to speak, Madam Chairman, and I am Debbie Applebaum from 10 Deerfield Lane. I concur with all of the statements that have already been made about the concerns relative to public safety and health. I want to just make 2 points. One is I recognize that going to wetlands will be part of this project's process. The wetlands that are on that property, it forms under the Deerfield Drive. It goes into the brook. The brook goes behind number 8 Deerfield Drive. It is open. You can actually see it on their property. It flows behind number 4, which is next door to me, and exits into a wetlands basin on my property that actually expands and recedes based on the quantity of water. With just the amount of rain that we've had over the last few weeks, I have a pond that is supporting waterfowl right now, and this happens frequently. So I respectfully request that wetlands look at not just what might happen in that one piece of property, but where the water will actually come down and impact into those other areas. Also, I concur with the question about the construction. Specifically, I've had issues with blasting that was done at 11 Grove Lane to blast away rock where it caused settling on my foundation. And a neighbor who, very respectfully said, we're building a pool. It'll be 3 days of jackhammering to get the rock done. It took 3 weeks. And it was an incredible disruption. They were as good about it as they could be and limited the hours and all those things. But I am very concerned about the whole process of the construction, given the location and the traffic. If those trucks and construction vehicles can't sit on the property, where are they going to go? Where will they stage? How will they move back and forth? We already know what it's like if Deerfield Drive has to be reduced to a single lane. And one final comment, because I can't tell from the preliminary drawings, but where is the entrance and egress going to be coming out to Deerfield Drive? Deerfield Lane, trying to make a left turn going north onto Deerfield Drive is already kind of challenging. The same for Grove. If you're adding an entrance that would have people making a left-hand turn out onto Deerfield Drive heading south, you potentially have cars colliding with one another. So I just want all of that to be recognized. I sent in some other testimony, and I thank you all for your time and consideration as this project's reviewed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Applebaum. Just one answer, just so you know. We don't have the ability to advise wetlands what to ask. So I would strongly suggest that you find out when this is on the wetlands agenda and make your questions to them about what their scope of review is and ask them, because they are it's legally separate for us. So we can't boss them around at all. But so I would suggest that you talk to them, that you go there and speak.
Thank you very much for that suggestion.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Tessie, you are good to go. I think you basically got about the same color that we had already given you. There's some issues that need to be addressed that our Paramount and neighbors had raised, other things such as the staging, which we will. Anything else you want to say in your closing comments?
Just to appreciate everyone's time, yours,
Okay.
and the speakers. There's a lot of good constructive thought put into what many said. Take it to consideration, I'm sure. We'll do the best we can to work with everyone, really.
Yep.
See where we come out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tessie.
Have a good evening.
All righty, folks. So that leaves us with a decision item, an item to be decided, and with that, which would be 220 Davis. And it then leaves us with the approval of the minutes as well. And then we can go eat dinner, and you can have more than 20 minutes.
Oh, so generous, Madam Chair.
I know. All right. Okay. So if anybody wants to make a motion on 220 Davis.
I propose, Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do it. What were we doing again? Davis?
Davis, yeah, Davis.
A lot of things happening over there. Okay, 220 Davis Avenue, final site plan special permit PLPZ 2022-441. Applicant seeking to construct a 587 square foot shed dormer and second story deck to an existing two-family residence on a 5,945 square foot property in the R6 zone. On 2/9/22, the applicant received variances of front yard setback and permitted a number of stories by the ZBA. That was almost a year ago. Yikes.
2/9/21. Oh no, 2/9/22. You're right. I forgot what year we were. Yep.
Ouch.
Ouch.
By the ZBA under PLZE 220004. Commission notes the lot is undersized per section 6205 of the BZR. And as required, the property came before the commission as a pre-application at the 8/2/22 public hearing under PLPZ 22-340. Commission finds that zoning issue comments on 11/17/22 indicating the proposal meets the BZR. Sewer issue comments on 1/19/23 indicating issues to address prior to zoning permit. Engineering, the applicant has submitted a drainage exemption dated 5/3/22. EMAC issued comments dated 11/29/22 indicating recommendations to the project. Conservation issued comments dated 11/15/22, the recommendations to the project. And Wetlands issued a permit needs questionnaire on 7/10/22 indicating no action required. Therefore, a motion to approve the site plan special permit noting the following. For conservation comments, the existing driveway should be maintained and the wooded slope behind the garage remain intact and the existing flowering cherry at the front of the residence should be preserved. Per sewer division comment, the applicant has submitted an acknowledgement letter dated 1/6/23. And the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Macri,
Finally, aye.
Lowe,
Aye.
Levy.
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. You want to do the minutes?
Okay, minutes, as the minutes for the 2/2/21, 2/17/21, 3/16/21, and 4/13/21 public hearings have been distributed. Are there any corrections?
No, I tried to open them on the OneDrive and couldn't figure out which ones that I couldn't figure out where they were on the OneDrive. So I really should.
Sorry, they're in a folder outside. They're not in the meeting. They're outside of the meeting folder.
Okay. So I have no corrections and I'm going to not vote because I didn't open them. I couldn't figure it out. All right.
So hearing no requested corrections to the minutes, therefore a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Yeski,
Aye.
Mr. Macri,
Aye.
Mr. Lowe,
Aye.
Mr. Levy,
Aye.
and Albin abstains. And with that, the motion passes 4-0-1. And folks, as regards the site walk on Burying Hill, I feel like the big issues from the road. Do you want a site walk or not? I mean, we said yes, but you know, they're always tough to schedule because everybody's how much do people want to do it? I mean, I do want to go to Sherwood, for example. That one I think we really need to see. What do you guys think?
If I have time, I'd like to go see it.
Great.
Drive by be fine, but it's that understanding the grade in between the house, the stone wall, and the
great. All right,
tennis court.
so Patrick will try to schedule it. If you can't go, drive by it, and it'll be on our next agenda, and then we'll be educated on it.
I'll make sure that you all are aware that when it's staked too, as Mr. Romano offered. So
okay.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna
that's a
drive
good
by
idea.
looking for flags that may not be there.
Okay. All right. So is everybody ready for our dinner break?
More than dinner.
A 2-week-long dinner break.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right, you guys. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.